attitude well.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
Hello, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, Adam Keller, and we are broadcasting live, online, and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. Today, Aerojet workers lost their bid to unionize, and we break down those results. Lee Harris talks to us about how money from Biden's CHIPS Act is being used to hurt workers, literally. Tryston gives us our regular Madison City report. All that and more on today's program. In overtime, if you want to, I'll go ahead and plug this. I'll go ahead and plug this now so you can be ready for it, folks that are listening to us on the radio. In overtime, we are going to be covering live the press conference of the Teamsters Union that will be live at 11 a.m. Central. We'll be tuning in to hear what International Teamsters President Sean O'Brien has to say, giving our live reactions, stuff like that. So make sure that you find us online so you can keep listening to us, because that's going to be very important. If you want to be part of the program today, we've got a phone number. The line is not open right now because we've got a lot to get to during the main show, but we are going to be taking calls in overtime after we run the press conference. So, interested particularly in the thoughts of Teamsters here in overtime about everything that's going on and their reactions to Sean O'Brien's press conference. So during the main show, you can text us at 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can call us in overtime at the same number, and you can leave a voicemail and send us a text message throughout the week, and we might answer it on the next show. So if you haven't gotten enough of us, folks, by the time we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, then you can find us anywhere you find anything online. Believe it or not, we do other stuff throughout the week. We have, and so sometimes I will tweet very funny things. I'm a very entertaining guy on Twitter at JacobM_AL. You can find the show at Labor Reporters. So you can find us online, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, and some other places. TVLR.fm, of course. Make sure that you bookmark that page. And do follow our TikTok, because it has been doing better recently. The algorithm has been picking up our stuff. We had one video with almost 1 million views. Wow, that's crazy. So find us everywhere. All at the Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. Our largest single source of funding comes directly from our listeners in the form of monthly donations. So if you want to become one of those donors and help us continue to do what we are doing now, then do become a monthly donor, because that is really that's really an important part of our funding, and that's going to be an important part of the way that we grow the project. So you can do that at tvlr.fm/donate, tvlr.fm/donate, and you can set up a recurring payment through our union payment processing service. If you want to buy our merch, you can go to tvlr.fm/merch, or tvlr.fm/store. And you can find all of our merch there. You can also become a patron at patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report if you just like that interface. And if you are a patron, then you get an ad-free version of the show all in one file. So if you're a member of a union, then please also think about getting your local to sponsor the show. Your local union, your regional district council, your state council, your international union, anybody of organized labor there's a little bit of money to go around among those organizations, and we could definitely use the support.
Absolutely, yeah. We'd love that. Whether it's a union, a progressive organization, a media outlet, a union print shop, whatever the situation may be. If you're interested in connecting with our audience of union allies and activists, definitely hit us up. And let me add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed today in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. We welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, or your favorite podcast app. And we are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out.
Absolutely. So, like I said, we are going to be talking to Lee Harris in just a few minutes. We're really looking forward to that conversation. She's been doing some great reporting on what's going on in Arizona with the construction of a semiconductor plant. But before we get to that, we want to get to this local story about the workers at Aerojet Rocketdyne. I know that is a question that we have been asked actually throughout the week. We've been asked about, and we've said it on social media. We broke the news on social media, and so, if you follow us there, you would have known it as soon as it happened. But workers at Aerojet Rocketdyne were not successful in their bid for unionization. The vote was not particularly close. It was 80 against, 29 for the union, which is very disappointing. The vote happened on Wednesday, like we said last week. Workers had an opportunity both before and after their shifts in the employer's conference room to vote. The count was completed the same day because of the small unit, and so I got messages from some of the workers and the union staff telling me the results. And so just a little bit of background. This is the second time that workers have tried to unionize at Aerojet Rocketdyne here in the last year or two. If for longtime listeners of the show and very observant listeners of the show will remember us making note of that during last week in Southern Labor, that Aerojet Rocketdyne employees had filed a petition for union election sometime last year. That election ended up getting pulled because of a lack of support among the bargaining unit, and so then they refiled. Just a note on last week in Southern Labor, the reason that has stopped is because Jonah Furman, the person who was putting together the newsletter for the entirety of the United States, has stopped doing that because he's now on the communications staff for the UAW. So he doesn't have time to do that anymore, understandably. And so we're working on building out capacity to do to collect that information ourselves in-house. But back to the Aerojet story, so the first time, like I said, they pulled the petition before it got to an election, so they didn't have an election. Then they refiled when they felt like they were again, over 50% of the people had signed cards. And then once they got the election, it came back that the unit was a bit bigger than they had anticipated. And so there was consideration from the union of pulling the petition again. But what I was told when I talked to folks is that people on the committee inside Aerojet were against that. Were against pulling the petition again. They were really, they really wanted to have an election, to just have a shot, to actually have a vote, and that I understand that impulse and that makes sense. And so the union did not pull the petition. They allowed the vote to go through, even though they were kind of expecting a loss. And so, everybody that I talked to, from worker to organizer to international representative, said that, in particular, the biggest kind of thing was management's assertions that a contract would take years to acquire, and not only that, but that during the process of negotiations, Aerojet would be unable to, by law, give out any raises. And so the folks said that was very detrimental to the campaign. That did a lot of damage to the campaign, according to workers and the union. And that's understandable if you believe that, right? Because if you and some of the truth is that it could take a while to get a contract. The thing behind that is that whose fault would that be? That would be the companies. It would not be the unions. But it is absolutely not true that you could not give scheduled raises or bonuses that would typically come at certain times during the bargaining process. What is actually true is that the company must maintain status quo. And so status quo does not mean static, right? That nothing can change or that nothing can progress as previously scheduled. It means that the working conditions must be the same as you would have expected but for the union campaign and contract negotiations, right? So regularly scheduled raises, bonuses that you would expect to get, those are still absolutely legal. And in fact, the NLRB has ruled that withholding of regular raises is illegal, right? So, management's assertions that you would not be able to get a raise during the time of contract negotiations is just not true. It's just factually inaccurate. But if you believe that, it is understandable why that would be scary to you. Because, folks in the factory, some of them living paycheck to paycheck, a 3% raise, particularly in this environment of high inflation, is very important. And so even if all you can expect is a 3% raise, it's important to get that 3% raise, right? Eric, the worker that we spoke to last week, said that, management had basically convinced folks that if they unionized, quote, they would lose something. Which is very unfortunate, but it's understandable. And Andre, another one of the workers that I've had communications with, said that he can understand how people could believe, and maybe potentially it might even be true that in the short term, the better thing for an individual would be not to unionize because of all of the dirty tricks that management would pull. But in his belief and his argument and my belief is that in the long term, and potentially even in the short term, but certainly in the long term, unionization is going to be the better thing, both for the individual and the group at Aerojet. But it's a very difficult thing to go against management, and so. Some other consistent lies and misdirections that were maybe less effective than the bit about the contract negotiations, but were certainly there, is that inside the facility, I've been told that anti-union folks were given free rein to, just talk up the case against the union. They were never admonished or told not to discuss the campaign on the floor, while the same thing was not true for the pro-union folks. They were pulled to the side by management. This is according to folks that I have talked to inside of the shop. They were pulled aside and told that you need to be quiet or your job is potentially on the line, which is, of course, illegal and retaliatory and intimidation. But, labor law is not, it doesn't have a lot of teeth in this country. Somebody else bought into some anti-pension arguments, was somehow worried about having a defined benefit retirement plan, saying that, I want to be able to invest my money for retirement and, do with it what I want to do. And, just any analysis of the effectiveness of pensions versus 401ks would show you that is not that's not a winning argument. But, some people believed it.
Right. And you could still take your own money and do what you wish in terms of retirement, especially if you get a union and you get a raise. You can take that pay raise and put it into your own investment account. That's a little silly, and it's sad that actually worked on some folks.
Yeah. Something else is management, I was told, was going around the shop floor handing out vote no bracelets, or I'm voting no, or I'm against the union bracelets, some kind of anti-union bracelets, which is also, that my understanding is that's not legal either, that management cannot be, participants in the campaign, right? They can give their arguments, but they can't go around, handing out vote no stuff, right? Or is that not?
You know, I'm not exactly sure what the legal limit there is. Because you're right, you know, management is not part of the campaign per se.
Right.
That doesn't stop them from running anti-campaigns. But, yeah, you know, it's interesting. I'm not sure exactly where that line is, but it sounds like they certainly were willing to step up to the line, if not cross it.
Yeah. And even if that is legal, you know, you can understand how it would be intimidating to not take one of those bracelets, right? If everybody else in your shift,
watching.
Yeah, folks are watching, and if everybody else in your shift is publicly saying they're voting no, and you're the only one, you could potentially put a target on your back, and you know, no doubt that's scary. They were told that you know, oh, if you just give us a shot, you know, we'll level you up quicker, whatever. And so, you know, that's kind of the state of things. Even though they lost, Eric did tell me that he doesn't regret participating in the campaign. He said he's made friends that he's going to, you know, that'll be with him for the rest of his life, and that it's been a really powerful experience for him. And so, you know, that's great to hear. Frenchie, the staff organizer with the machinists in this area, told me that he's appreciative of the supporters, and that to the Aerojet employees and anybody else, for that matter, that's interested in unionization in the Huntsville area, the machinist union is still here and ready to support, and they and they are actually, you know, more or less expecting that workers at Aerojet are going to see here in a couple of years or in a year or so that that management has not kept their promises, and that, you know, they're going to want a change. And so the machinist union is still going to be there after, you know, after management has failed to live up to their promises again. So I'll leave you with this really funny story that Eric told me yesterday when I was talking to him. He said that after the election, he was talking to an observer for the company, and this fella said that, you know, I've got a buddy that works for FedEx, and he's been there for 20 years as a driver, and he's trying to get out of it because that FedEx just doesn't pay a lot, and on top of that, they're trying to phase out their drivers and contract out all of their driving work, kind of like Amazon does, and so. He told Eric, the observer for the company, said, you know, I told him he needs to get a job at UPS. You know, look at how much more money they get than FedEx. And Eric was like, you know, why do you reckon they get that? It's because they're unionized. It's because they've stood up for themselves. UPS didn't just out of benevolence give Teamsters $30, $40 an hour to deliver packages. It's because they, you know, the workers came together, saw the value that they're creating for the company, and demanded that their pay be commensurate with that, and that, you know, they take home more of the profits. And so, you know, that's kind of a funny story that, you know, you've got an active participant in an anti-union campaign advising his friends to go work for a union company because of the obvious benefits of it.
Right.
Well,
and I would just say, you know, I do appreciate everyone's efforts for the campaign. It's not
Absolutely.
an easy thing to do, and you know, win or lose, it's a tough challenge, and so respect everyone's efforts there. I definitely hope there's going to be a lot of reflection and debriefing and kind of analyzing, you know, what went well, what didn't, obviously, and trying to learn from it and move forward in a positive way where you can really, you know, build back better.
Yeah.
So to speak. Not to steal a Joe Biden line right as we're about to talk to Lee Harris and dissect him a little bit.
Yeah.
But
yeah, well, we're gonna go ahead and take that break, hear from our sponsors who pay the bills. I mean, and you know, maybe we're gonna be talking about this more in the coming weeks, but we really are coming up on a potential need to scale back some of the stuff that we are doing because of a lack of sponsors materializing. And so we really appreciate the sponsors that we do have, and you know, are looking forward to continuing our relationship in the future. And so if you want to be a sponsor, reach out to us, and so let's listen to them, what they got to say.
IBW 558 is like a great football team. You've got to have the aptitude, skills, and knowledge to outperform the competition. If you're a non-union electrician, now is the perfect time to get off the sideline and join our team. We have the absolute best wages and benefit package in North Alabama and Southern Tennessee. It's because our team stands together, bargains together, and our families benefit from it. With immediate openings, you have the opportunity to see why the IBEW is the right choice.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for this program comes from the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 136 out of Central Alabama. Learn more at ibew136.org.
Attention union members, membership organizations, podcasters, or anyone with a payment processing need. The future is here, and your organization needs to be prepared by working with Unionly. With Unionly, your union or organization can take payments on a mobile device, eliminating processing fees, giving you a better price than other payment processing methods, while at the same time supporting a union-friendly business with a specialized skill set to meet your needs. Your members will thank you when they pay their dues at their convenience without waiting in line to deposit cash or check. Start preparing for the future today by calling 206-595-8631 or visiting unionly.io.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
The sign hit the city like a bolt of lightning.
You know the photo. It's iconic. Marches in the streets holding a simple sign with a simple message.
I am a man.
The I Am Story podcast explores the fight that inspired those words, how a group of sanitation workers in Memphis stood up and made history.
They don't see us as men and women.
Go to iamstory.com or wherever you get your podcasts to subscribe.
I'm attorney Tommy Sinyard. When you've been injured and need help, you need a lawyer who's with you.
Sinyard Law. You need attorneys always available to take care of you. Sinyard Law.
And keep you in the loop. It's your case. You need to know what's happening.
Sinyard Law. And never a charge to meet with us to evaluate your case. Sinyard Law.
A new firm, but an old name. One that will stay with you every step of the way.
Sinyard Law. The name with proven results.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth should go to labor, and you are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, and my co-host is Adam Keller. If you've got anything to add, you can join us in the chat or send us a text message, 844-899-TVLR. You can find us online where we are streaming to YouTube and Facebook, and we do monitor the chat. We appreciate everybody's contributions. We've had somebody ask about the student loan case, and we may or may not talk about that some more, but definitely not a fan. And somebody else said that the Supreme Court is more or less a political action committee, and that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true, and it's important for people to recognize that. So with that, we're going to talk to Lee Harris. Lee Harris is a reporter for the American Prospect and also editor for the New York State Focus. I have not been following the New York State Focus as much as I follow the American Prospect. The American Prospect is a very good publication. They have great reporting, great analysis, all that good stuff. But I've heard lots of good things about the New York State Focus, and I believe that I have even seen some of the reporting and been impressed by it. But of course, not being a New Yorker, I'm not following that as much. But Lee joins us today to give us an update on what's happening in Arizona with the construction of a semiconductor manufacturing plant with dollars from the CHIPS Act. Lee, thanks for taking the time with us this morning.
Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to be here.
Absolutely. So, a couple of months ago, you came to talk to us about this construction, and at that time, you did hint at some potential and maybe alleged safety issues on the job and things like this. But I don't think you had as much information then as you do now. You have since actually been on the ground in Arizona to take a look at what's happening there. But last time, you talked to us about the company's more or less refusal to utilize trade union labor in the construction process. Can you just remind us quickly about what's going on there with them refusing to utilize project labor agreements or trade unions?
For sure. So to give you a little context on the spending, along with all of its clean energy investments in the IRA, the Biden administration passed this law, the CHIPS Act, which puts up $52 billion of federal money for investment in semiconductors, which are a big national security priority. They go in everything. They go in cars and iPhones and missiles and kids' toys. They're really crucial electronics. So the Commerce Department is right now in the process of choosing where to spend that money. They put out a public guidance document with some criteria on how they're going to select different companies. One problem is that there aren't that many players in this space. There's Intel, Samsung, Global Foundries, and then there's this company TSMC, a Taiwanese company that is far and away ahead of the competition. They just produce sort of by far the most sophisticated chips. They produce the only chips that go in Apple's iPhones and Macs, are the only advanced logic chips. Apple stopped using chips from Intel in those devices back in 2020. So TSMC is this really sort of very important company, and there's a lot riding on getting them back in the US. But I give all that context to say that there's this kind of crazy cognitive dissonance going on right now between what the Biden administration says it's doing and what's playing out on the ground in Phoenix. Biden has said that he wants these chips plants to be built union and run union. In fact, he went to this TSMC site in Phoenix and said, this is being built union. And it's technically true that there are some union contractors on the site on a job site of about 12,000 workers right now. No more than a quarter of them are union workers. Some union reps told me it was less. And I'd say, okay, a quarter of a huge job site, that's not so bad for unions. But the big question on construction sites is whether you can get a project labor agreement, because having a couple thousand union workers competing in this kind of race to the bottom with non-union workers doesn't get these union contractors very far. You need a PLA because you need to ensure the entire site is union, because it's almost impossible to run a grassroots organizing campaign on a construction site the way you would with a hospital or an auto factory, because the workers are there temporarily. So you need to unionize it up front. And TSMC has just flat out refused a project labor agreement. That kind of brings us up to the present moment. So TSMC doesn't want a deal, a PLA, which if unions got a PLA, they say they would kind of immediately kick into gear, training up thousands of workers to staff the site. But they don't have that. Instead, and this is what I found when I went, it's just an incredibly difficult job site by sort of all reports that I heard when I was there. First of all, and most seriously, the building trades president in Arizona says that there have been at least 2 deaths of construction workers at the site. And then just a variety of injuries, which I heard from other folks on the site, mostly impacting people who are not union affiliated themselves, often who haven't had a great deal of training or apprenticeship time. But really terrible injuries were described to me. A man in his 60s who fell off a ladder and broke both his legs. A young man on a work visa from Mexico who fell through flooring, a more than 30-foot drop, and damaged his spleen, broke his wrist, broke his ribs, and he ended up going to the hospital. I was told that he was put up in a hospital by the general contractor, but there's a huge amount of secrecy, especially with migrant workers who can very easily be sent out of the country and never heard from again, and so can't complain to the press. So it's really hard, not just for media to track these people down, but in fact for unions often want to reach out to them and kind of speak to them as an example of how conditions at the job site are really tough. And the union workers I spoke to said they couldn't get in touch with this guy after that injury happened. So bad injuries, and just a sort of, from everything I heard, pretty bad safety culture. I'll go on if I might, if that's cool. And
no, keep going. Yeah.
So another big problem is they're using various staffing contractors, and I think this Taiwanese company is having kind of like its first taste of what it's like to work with temp organizations and staffing contractors in the U.S. that run things pretty differently. So, for instance, ABM, which is this staffing organization that staffs for Amazon, that's kind of notorious for having been sued over wage violations. They're providing a lot of the janitorial staff at the site, and in fact, janitorial kind of understates it. At these semiconductor facilities, things have to be kept incredibly clean because the kind of entire facility is built around a clean room, what's called a clean room, where chips are produced. And so these sort of janitorial staff actually play a really critical function in the running of in the building of the factory, because they need to keep things incredibly clean or the chips won't be produced well. So they're like hanging from the ceiling in bunny suits, like full body gear, meticulously cleaning steel beams, and it's like very serious work. So ABM has been staffing them, but I learned that they've been consistently underpaying at least the worker that I spoke to, and she said the same thing had been happening to her colleagues. And I reached out and they said they've had technical issues paying workers accurately at the site, and this is sort of a pattern with them. And so, and the third kind of dynamic, beyond the many injuries that were described to me and that kind of like wage theft at least one contractor, is just that there have been a number of setbacks by non-union contractors who are employing really badly trained workers. So when you have a ton of non-union, pipe fitters, plumbers, sheet metal workers on a site, they'll often make really rookie mistakes. And just to give you one example of that, the pipe fitter, a non-union firm, installed piping on the site, and then in a totally typical move, ran condenser water through the pipe to check that it was functioning. And then they went to drain the pipe, and I was told that this mistake that they made, a first-year union apprentice would never make this kind of rookie mistake, but they forgot to vent the pipe, and so they drain the water, and it collapses in on itself like a sucking the air out of a water bottle. And that's wasted pipe, and then it creates these long delays, the attempt to fix that problem. And so unions kind of point to this as an example of, having decently trained workers who have been through a union apprenticeship program isn't just better for the workers, it's actually better for delivering the building on time, on schedule, and under the right costs. So those are some of the dynamics that I was seeing out at this site. But if I could add one more thing, what's kind of crazy, having gone and seen all of these problems that are playing out at TSMC on the ground, is that it's totally out of touch with the national conversation about how the Biden administration is doing, because there are a number of critics who say, wow, Biden's agenda is never going to get built because he's so pro-union and he's given so many handouts to unions that everything's going to be really slow and over cost. And I think TSMC executives have played that up. And so they've been making the rounds in the media saying it's impossible to work with American workers because they don't have the right work culture. They're too slow and they're too costly. And they've sort of gotten a lot of, the company has gotten a lot of press saying, wow, maybe TSMC is such an efficient company and American workers are so slow and inefficient and expensive that it's going to be a real problem, and this is a national security priority. That's kind of the national narrative, that American workers are not good emaugh to work for TSMC.
Wow.
That brings us to the present moment, and TSMC has just announced that on top of a number of Taiwanese migrant workers who are currently at the plant, they're going to be bringing in, with help from the US government, with expedited visas that they're trying to secure, at least 500 more workers to help build the plant. And I'll leave it there, but I wonder what you make of that.
Yeah, well, and that about the project labor agreements and the union labor being important in actually the quality of the build is something that people just don't, we actually responded to a clip of a Republican congressperson talking about PLAs and really going up against the the acting labor secretary, Julie Su, about them, alleging that they cost more. And there are, to his, if I want to be extremely charitable, there are studies that show that project labor agreement construction sites are more costly. There are also studies that show that is not the case. And so, the way that you get to the truth of that matter is you kind of got to do a little bit of digging. But even if we granted him, potentially, let's just say for the sake of argument, let's say that using union labor does cost more on a construction project. There are other considerations, right? There are other considerations when you're thinking about, should we do this or that thing? And that example is such an important one, is the consideration of how likely is it that the workers at this site are going to make millions of dollars worth of mistakes, right? How likely is it that these workers are going to be well trained enough to complete the project on schedule? These are all other things to think about, whether than number big or small, right?
And that's to say nothing of the actual safety of the people involved, and I think that's huge. Because the project labor agreements are more likely to have safer work environments with these highly trained people that you're describing, these highly trained union workers, and setting those standards. And what Lee is describing is people whose lives are ruined.
Right.
At work.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're just going to work to sell their time and their labor and their body, and they're not going to be able to come home, not in the same way, and that's awful.
And I mean, we've even seen some examples of some of this right here at home. The United Launch Alliance, which is a rocket manufacturer here in Decatur, their machinists are unionized there with the Machinists Union. And so when they attempted to do, or when they began working on an expansion of the Decatur plant, the president of the Machinists Union, said, look, I think that this should be done with union construction, with construction trade unions. But at the very least, you should have a bid process for this, and they should have the opportunity to compete for this project. And they never were. They were never given the opportunity to compete. They ULA hired non-union construction contractors, and wouldn't you know it, they had like part of the frame of the building was created with steel beams, and it collapsed under a little bit of wind. And so here's this is a big delay and a costly delay that's happening right here at home, kind of along the lines of what you were talking about. And as far as the training, Adam, you've seen this at the Orion. Adam is a member of the Stagehands Union. And they were working for a while to get a CBA with a local music venue. And my understanding is that some of the management was really pushing to get this done because the non-union stagehands that they were using previously or in the non-union shows were not doing very well.
Right, yeah, absolutely. There was a clear difference in the quality of the work being performed and the safety of the work being performed. And I think that's what you're speaking to, Lee. Like there's... and that's the frustrating thing about it, I imagine, from your coverage, is that what's being said, like from the politicians' point of view, is this totally different picture from actual reality on the ground there. And so I really appreciate what you're doing to kind of like just expose what's actually happening beyond talking points and, beyond the company's line, which I find so offensive.
Yeah.
That's really, that really bothers me. This company out here saying that, American workers aren't efficient enough, or they're too costly, they're too slow, too lazy, whatever the situation may be. That's just so insulting.
Are the workers on the ground kind of aware of this disconnect?
I think it's hard to say. The unions certainly are, because they were promised one thing and they're being given something else. So they're pretty clear. I mean, I spoke to Mike Day, who's the great organizer of the director of the laborers union down there, and he doesn't have a single guy on site. It's a 12,000 person job site. But I think for a lot of the temp workers and or workers who are brought in through staffing agencies, often they're less aware. I mean, to your point about, project labor agreements aren't necessarily always the less expensive option. I think that's true. And I don't mean to say, union workers are ultimately less expensive. Part of the reason we want unions is so that they can be paid a living wage, and a wage that brings them into the middle class. However, I would say it's interesting to watch this foreign company kind of have its first foray into the crazy American labor market, because I think they right at the outset were like, yeah, we're not going the union path. That's going to be way higher cost. We're going to take that cheaper option of working with these staffing agencies. They work well enough for Amazon. Shouldn't be a problem for us. And they're finding that, wow, actually training your workers matters, and bringing in really routinely exploited workers doesn't always turn out to be the best bet for the bottom line either. And so they've gone this. Yeah, imagine that. Another thing to point out is just, this is a totally different story than the one playing out in other parts of America right now. I mean, in Ohio, partly with Sherrod Brown's help, Intel is building a massive new semiconductor factory, and IBEW has gotten the largest project labor agreement there in their history by a factor of 2. It's two times as big as the LA they've gotten in the past. So that's a generation's worth of good paying jobs for that community. And so I think there's a little bit of this like internal colony dynamic that we see in right to work states where investments that are really major can end up not benefiting workers very much. The other thing is that the reason to focus on this now is that the US government has some leverage still. So as I mentioned, Commerce is choosing where to spend its $52 billion in semiconductor investments, and they have a lot of latitude. They could decide to give it all to Intel, to give it all to Samsung. Most likely they'll give it to a mix. And they've put out some guidance saying, but it's all sort of like polite suggestions rather than requirements. It's, we'd like to see you working with local labor groups. Tell us about your workforce plan. They even put out a statement that was really widely sort of mocked as evidence that the Biden administration is asking companies to do too much on labor. They put out a statement saying, tell us what your plan is to ensure that childcare is available. And the business media kind of had a field day with this. They were like, chip makers ought to be making chips. They shouldn't be worried about providing childcare. The thing is, I kind of hear that on some level. I mean, I see why it sounds like woke or something to provide childcare, but
I don't know. I mean, people say that. There are people that would say that, but the idea that it's woke or not conservative to provide childcare is really a bizarre argument.
Every church I know has some childcare component, right?
I mean, the idea that you don't want families taken care of is just that it must be an anti-conservative opinion is pretty wild to me, but it is unfortunately kind of the state of play.
Totally. But and just to give you a sense of how, like, as I said, disconnected from reality all of this criticism is, Commerce is not mandating childcare. They're saying just let us know if there is childcare available in the area. You don't have to subsidize it. You don't have to provide it. Just let us know if it exists, basically.
Well, that's big government, isn't it? Politely asking something.
Right, exactly. So anyway, Commerce has put out this guidance, but none of these are hard and fast rules. Right. And so TSMC, I think, is right now in a game of chicken where it's saying, you need us more than we need you. You need us to produce our cutting edge chips. And Biden administration, you're terrified that in a war with Taiwan, if China invades Taiwan, you'll lose access to cutting edge chips. This is a national security priority of yours, Washington. Are you really going to require us to work with local labor unions? I think that's the dynamic a little bit right now. And so we'll see in the coming months whether the Commerce Department comes back and pushes them and says, we do actually want to deliver the good paying jobs that we promised, or whether they say, you know what, you're right. We need TSMC more than TSMC needs us.
Right. And so we're going to get to this bit about the government potentially even helping them expedite migrant visas before they even try to go through a project labor agreement route. I mean, that's just insane. So we're going to talk about that in just a second. But the obvious thing here is nationalization, right? I mean, and it's even beyond a commercial interest that citizens in the United States would have for the nationalization of certain things like healthcare or something like that. I mean, like you said, there's a real, actual, genuine national security aspect to this here. And so if this, Taiwanese capitalist is getting in the way of us meeting our national security needs, we should just as a country just take it, right? I mean, right?
It's a really good point, because another dimension of what Commerce has been politely asking for, though not requiring, is it said, please don't do stock buybacks with the billions of dollars that we're giving you.
Oh, man.
The funny thing about that request, a lot of these big chip producers do tons of corporate stock buybacks. But the funny thing is that they can put it on their balance sheet wherever they want. So they can still issue stock buybacks and say, oh yeah, we didn't use the CHIPS money for that. But of course, money is totally fungible. And so there's very little way of enforcing this request that they please not just give these taxpayer dollars to shareholders. The nationalization idea is a really interesting one. We, particularly because of the national security dimension.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it just seems, but there's not been any talk of this from the administration, right? Any talk of nationalization?
No, I don't think so. And the wider context, I guess, is that American firms fell really far behind. As I mentioned, the reason we're now in this kind of on the back foot in our attempt to bargain with TSMC is partly that Intel and other producers based here have really outsourced this capacity, and then also just didn't stay at the cutting edge of chip production. So maybe there's a reason to build those incentives in directly.
Right. So, a lot of this that we've been talking about, people can find more in your investigation for the American Prospect titled Chipmakers Scramble to Build Marred by Mistakes and Injuries. It's a very long investigative piece, very good. Would recommend people read it. And so the last thing that we wanted to talk about is the most recent piece that you put out yesterday titled TSMC to Bring 500 plus more migrant workers to Arizona. And you alluded to this earlier in the conversation, but there are talks that the United States government is going to be helping this company bring in migrant workers before making them try to really tap into the American workforce. What is up with that?
Yeah, it's outrageous. I mean, I think it's the government just buying the company line that American workers are impossible to work with. The irony is that there are already migrant workers at the site, right. Both America's sort of more classic flexible labor pool of exploitable migrant labor that it uses from below the southern border, and also Taiwanese workers working for these staffing firms that typically work with Taiwan. And it's just worth saying here, the objection isn't to using, I guess, non-American. The objection is to the fact that these workers are undercutting jobs that are being subsidized by American taxpayers, and also that when you have a plant with migrant workers who have work visas secured by the company, it makes it incredibly hard to push back on anything the company is doing wrong, or to demand higher labor standards, because these workers are there at the sort of at the pleasure of the executives, and they could be sent home anytime. They're almost impossible to organize.
Right. It's such a power imbalance.
Yeah, and even though, I mean, presumably, I mean, most of the people, undoubtedly, there are some undocumented immigrants. I would just assume, but presumably most of the immigrants at this site are quote unquote legal, are documented, but that really does not make their situation much better as far as the degree to which they can withstand retaliation, because like you said, even because a lot of these visas are dependent on their employer. And so if their employer decides, like, I'm not going to be your sponsor anymore, then they're going to get sent back.
Right. They're there temporarily at the behest of the employer, and it also just represents this renunciation of TSMC, which is supposed to be one of the major firms in the fastest growing city in America, Phoenix, them just renouncing the ability to work with American workers. Sorry, we tried it for a couple months, right, and we've decided we're just going to bring in our own laborers. So right, it undercuts half the point of this investment in domestic manufacturing capacity. You keep the national security angle, but if you can't work with American workers, it's like we're still doing offshoring.
Right. Yeah, we're just doing offshoring, but inside Arizona. I mean, it's really wild. And somebody mentioned in the chat that this sounds like human trafficking, and I mean, I think to an extent it really does. But isn't Arizona? Is Arizona one of these places where they have been passing loosening child labor laws?
That's really interesting. I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me. Of course, all along the new battery belt, where electric cars and batteries for e-vehicles are being manufactured, there have been a number of instances of child labor with big auto producers. But it's a great question about Arizona.
Right.
Yeah, and because and it made me think about the human trafficking angle. It made me think about that because in Arkansas, where Sarah Huckabee Sanders signed a bill to get rid of a requirement for a parental consent form to be to be signed. I mean, that is just a child trafficking enabling bill, right? I mean, because who does it help if you don't have to have this form signed by your parents to be able to work if you're a minor? It gives bosses one more way that they can feign ignorance to the utilization of children or of undocumented workers and things like this. And so it's very I mean, really, that bill is like child trafficking enabler bill.
Well, and everything we're talking about this morning here speaks to a huge imbalance of power and the concentration of power within corporate forces. In this case, not even a domestic corporation, right? A foreign corporation who is now being supported by our own government, our own tax dollars, and shipping in their own workforce.
Yeah.
Before they will do business with local labor unions, and that's just really a slap in the face.
Hell, I mean, if this was in Delaware, this company might be able to vote in Arizona.
Right.
I mean, we've seen some of that coming out of Arizona, trying to allow companies to vote in elections. And so, talking about voting, how is the fight coming from working folks in Arizona, from unions, and presumably there are some sympathetic politicians in Arizona. What's the status of some of the fight back against this?
It's one thing I want to write about in my next piece on this. My understanding so far, although I need to do some more reporting, is that Mark Kelly, the senator, has been at least talking with unions about this, and that they has appeared sympathetic, but ultimately they don't have a project labor agreement or much of a foothold at this site. There are also a number of other IRA-sponsored new investments, like a battery facility and a hydrogen hub, where it doesn't seem like they're going to get like unions are going to get any kind of deal with the employer either. Best case scenario there, they might be able to get a couple contractors on site, but no deal for labor standards seems like it's on the way. And so my sort of bigger question about how this all plays out is we're seeing a ton of the capital from the recent investments in the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS Act and the Infrastructure Act being spent in red states, and partly because that's just companies trying to game the system and build in places where they can treat workers worse and pay them less. One possible, and there was a debate for a while about whether that was intentional by Biden, whether Biden was like, we want these investments to go to red states for political reasons so that we can recapture some of these votes of disillusioned former Democrats who have started voting Republican. But if they just, and I think it's this interesting open question, if this Democrat administration manages to channel a lot of investment into these regions, maybe it does win over the kind of more right-wing working class. But if instead they fail to attach, decent labor standards and make them good-paying jobs, which is how it's playing out so far, I think, both in the southern states where we're seeing auto investments and in the Southwest, it's a real lost opportunity politically for Democrats.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing really, one of the primary grievances that the, quote unquote white working class had is is undocumented immigrants coming and quote unquote stealing our jobs, right? And there's certainly some problematic things to that framing, and there are ways that and it's important to understand that undocumented workers are workers, and that we need to have solidarity with them and recognize that they're not the enemy. It's the bosses that are both exploiting them and also undercutting us. But the idea that you could utilize, that it's going to win over right-wing workers by putting a big construction site that's going to be worked almost exclusively or primarily or in large part by migrant workers. The idea that that's going to be politically beneficial is insane. And in fact, I would anticipate that it's going to that it would have a negative effect politically.
Yep. Yeah, I guess I would just close by saying that this really is a live issue where we could kind of see it go both ways. I mean, it's true that TSMC is trying to bring in all these hundreds of additional workers, but they have up to $15 billion in subsidies that they're expecting on the line. So I think the Commerce Department decides to play hardball and to say, you know what?
Oh no, we lost Lee.
But if you're not going to employ American workers, you've lost me a little bit. Okay, am I back?
Yes, you're back. You're back. Yay.
I think Congress Department should play hardball And
Oh no,
Yeah,
we're losing Lee. We're losing Lee. I think she has totally cut out on us.
Well, I I think we were wrapping up anyway. So Lee Harris is a reporter for the American Prospect. Been doing some great reporting on the construction of the TSMC manufacturing facility in Arizona. Check out that reporting in the American Prospect. Follow her on Twitter at Lee_Harris. That is with 3 E's, LEEE_Harris. You can follow her on Twitter there. And
yeah, she's doing great work. Really appreciate the reporting.
Yeah, and I think that the wrap up was that the Commerce Department has $15 billion that they can play hardball with, and
Right.
they absolutely should, and they should do that for the benefit of our society and working folks and the labor movement. So
right, and absolutely, our labor movement has to be engaged with the Department of Commerce right now, talking about that $15 billion.
Yeah.
I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, really appreciate Lee. Thanks for being on the show and for all the good work you're doing for the American Prospect. Y'all check that out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Thanks, Lee.
all right. With that, we're going to go ahead and head to a break. We'll be right back. Tryston Gilbert is going to come online to talk to us about what's been going on in Madison City. Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back.
There's a lot of talk about a shortage of workers, but that's not the case with IBW 558. We have provided our customers over 3,000 workers and performed over 3 million man-hours in a pandemic year. With 8,000 OJT hours, 900 classroom hours, OSHA 30, and a state license, our members receive the equivalent of a master's degree. That's what makes IBW 558 the right choice for your electrical needs. Look us up at Facebook or at IBW558.org.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at IAMAW44.org.
Support for this program also comes from the Iron Workers, Local 477. So if you are looking for contractors with lower than average EMR and TRIR, they tell me that if you need to know what those mean, then you will. Or if you need to supplement a workforce at any level for any amount of time, short or long term, if you need iron workers that come trained and certified at no extra cost, or if you need workers from superintendent down to general laborer, and you're looking to start work on a project, or you're unhappy with your current contractor situation, you need to call my friend Jeb Miles with the Ironworkers Local 477. They only work with the best in the business, vetted contractors, and can do all kinds of jobs, from roofing to steel and bridge erection, from welding to heavy rigging, from structural repairs to machinery alignment, and much more. They supply manpower on 4 of the 5 largest projects in North Alabama, so you know they're legit. If you need good quality, safe, efficient, diligent, and knowledgeable workers on your job, then you need the Ironworkers Local 477. Call Jeb Miles at 256-383-3334 or via email at local477@bellsouth.net, and make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Valley Labor Report.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
The Laborers International Union of North America, Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact Donna at their training center to start the process. That phone number is 256-415-7452. Again, that phone number is 256-415-7452. No experience is needed. Free training is offered, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is their mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
I'm Attorney Tommy Sinyard. When you've been injured and need help, you need a lawyer who's with you.
Sinyard Law. You need attorneys always available to take care of you. Sinyard Law.
And keep you in the loop. It's your case. You need to know what's happening.
Sinyard Law. And never a charge to meet with us to evaluate your case. Sinyard Law.
A new firm, but an old name. One that will stay with you every step of the way.
Sinyard Law. The name with proven results.
Do you work in an auto manufacturing plant? Are you tired of taking pride in your work without getting the respect you deserve? Consider joining the fight to unionize. Auto workers across the industry are coming together because with a union, we can negotiate for the pay, benefits, and security that we deserve and can help sustain our families. In union plants, workers bargain for long-term wage increases, competitive bonuses, and more affordable benefits. You can join the growing wave of organizing today. Find out more and contact us at Uniting Auto Workers on Facebook or contact UAW Region 8 in Lebanon, Tennessee by going to www.uawregion8.net. That's www.uawregion8.net. A better future is ours.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Alabama's only union talk radio show. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host Adam Keller. We just wrapped up a conversation with Lee Harris from the American Prospect on CHIPS Act semiconductor construction projects in Arizona. Really great discussion. If you missed it and you're on the radio, you can check it out on YouTube. Great rave reviews already coming in from the audience. DL Cindero in the chat. Great job with that, Lee. Excellent articles in the American Prospect. On Twitter, Lee got a reply to her post promoting the video from a Robert saying, "That may have been the single best labor discussion I've heard in a long time. I'm truly thankful for the work you're doing and the sunlight you're shining into the places that are normally in the shadows." So really great reviews coming in for Lee, and
Great to hear that.
appreciate her taking the time with us. We've had a couple of people say in the chat that, if only we elect more Democrats, everything's going to be better. And that's what people are telling me. Even though Nancy Pelosi was cited in the decision to rescind student loan forgiveness. Did you see that, Adam?
No, I haven't seen that yet.
Robert Gorsuch literally quoted Nancy Pelosi in his opinion.
Wow.
Yeah. Wild stuff. But we've still got some stuff to get to before we get off the radio.
We do, yeah.
If you're listening to us on the radio, make sure that you find us online on YouTube and Facebook, where we are going to be running live the press conference that the Teamsters are putting on at 11 a.m. to talk about the status of the negotiations. So make sure that you follow us on YouTube and Facebook so you can see that. But right now, we're going to get to our regular Madison City Council report with our Madison City Council watcher, Tryston Gilbert. Tryston, welcome to the program. Appreciate your time.
Good morning, Jacob. Morning, Adam. Sorry I missed a month. I'm back now with 2 months of news to cover, so I'm going to try to get through it pretty fast, all right?
All right, sounds good. Yeah, so give us some of the top lines. What's going on in Madison City?
All right, well, first off, we've got the results of the special election that was held on May 9th. The city voted overwhelmingly to keep the mayor-council form of government. The result was about 3-1 against, if I remember correctly. I've got some thoughts about that. I still don't think it makes a huge difference which form of government the city works under. I think both kind of have pros and cons, as I've said before. I would have liked to have seen more of an effort by the proponents to actually defend their position. I saw a lot of road signs and billboards leading up to it saying vote no, and they had the much larger voice in the council meetings. I've heard from locals that the proponents, Madison Forward, I think it was, sent out a lot of mailers and attended some school-based events, but I really didn't see that much of them as things were heating up. So I feel like I showed a lot more clips of people who were against it, but that's just because there were more of them to show. I wasn't trying to be biased there. So yeah, we'll be mayor council town for probably at least another decade or so, maybe forever. Following that, the city's begun redistricting work. It's being drawn up by Slaughter and Associates, the legal firm who has done that for them before. And they're shooting to have 7 equal districts. I think that's the same as what they have now. I think it would have gone to 6 if it had become council manager. But it'll stay at 7. So that's that for that. My next item I want to talk about is some good news. I think I just confirmed this, that Madison is going to be getting a science museum. It's a biology and paleontology focused museum. So like dinosaurs, other prehistoric species, more of a biological bent, not your normal Huntsville, Madison rocket science. So a little bit of flavor, a little bit of spice.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. It's being organized and built by a nonprofit, the Innovation for Education Foundation, headed by one Joe Iacuzo. I got to see a bit of a work session where he was presenting his ideas. A bit of an eccentric, but who do you expect to start a science museum? He seems above board to me. At first, the council was concerned that the museum couldn't support itself financially. They were asking him for more detailed finances. He was saying that he couldn't get finance partners online until he had a building. He was seeking basically a building charter from the council down at the there's a bunch of old hexagon buildings they bought near Town Madison, which is over by Zert, if you're familiar. And they're converting some of those. So he was trying to get one of those. And according to the All Things Madison website, it looks like that did happen and the project is underway. So they have a website called madscimuseum.org. That's MADSCI museum.org. If you want to find other information, donate to that. It's all there.
Awesome.
That was the good news. This next one gets a little dark. The second meeting in May was one of the most highly attended meetings I've seen since I've been watching. There were a lot of people who showed up to express their concerns or support for Rocket City Armory. Rocket City Armory is a new privately owned gun store. It either was just completed or is nearing completion here in town. And the problem with it is it's very close to an elementary school. I think somebody said like 600 feet. And so with people finally waking up to the epidemic of gun violence, but specifically in schools, a lot of parents were there expressing concern and asking that the city please do something about it. And then there were a lot of people there in support of the store and its owner, and there was a lot of back and forth. The reason that it hadn't been caught before, so the city has several sort of zoning, or they have like a zoning system set up where if a new business is under a certain size, just by area, I think it's 10,000 square feet is their limit. They can go through this whole process and it doesn't come to the council's desk because it's business as usual sort of thing. So they didn't really hear about it until parents of school children there started raising their concerns, and now it's turned into a whole big public argument.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of it's kind of wild that there are people that are supportive of that. I have no problem with gun stores existing. In the same way that I have no problem with liquor stores existing. In fact, I would be a patron of both establishments, but I don't think it would be appropriate to have a liquor store 600 feet from an elementary school. And that doesn't make me, anti-beer or anti-liquor. I like beer, right? But there are some things that are just like, not appropriate for children. Why would we have it across from an elementary school? What are the arguments of people that want, a literal armory right next to their children?
Well, most of the people who are concerned about it, I share your position, really. Nobody has a problem with the gun store as a concept. Nobody has a problem with its owner. They just said this is appallingly bad taste to have it near a school. One father told a story about his child having just a traumatic episode even seeing it, because a lot of children have a lot of anxiety about this issue, understandably. They're smarter than people give them credit for. They know what kind of what kind of direction that the country is in. And then there were also some decent arguments on the people supporting it side. To be fair, I will give them. I'll just scroll down in my notes here for a second. There were a lot of the regular sort of pro-business type people who were like, this shouldn't be the city's concern. This should be this business followed all the procedures and everything. It's done everything right. But I'm going to stop being neutral here for a second. There were also a lot of really bad arguments on that side. A lot of people showed up to be character witnesses for the store's owner. And it's like, okay, that's fine, but nobody was besmirching the man. Nobody said he's a bad person.
To the issue.
Right.
Yeah, it's a structural problem. And I think it just to me it highlights the general conservatives don't like to see things as structures. They like stories of good people and bad people, and so they're saying this guy is a good person, and I don't disagree with him. He seemed like he's a veteran. He knows his way around firearms, the business. He seems to have overcome a lot of adversity to build that store. But could he have built it somewhere else? Is the question. So yeah, the character references were just missing the point. You also had some very overused arguments there. There was literally a lady who said the only thing that can stop a bad guy with a gun is
a good guy with a gun.
Yeah, she said that, and I kind of tuned out at that point. So that's a thing that's happening. There's a lot of different people who spoke. I can't really drill down and give them full credit here. You should go watch the second May meeting on I Vote Madison's YouTube channel. They've still been faithfully logging these, and they have links in the description to each commenter, so you can jump to the ones you want to hear pretty quickly. But you should listen to all of them.
And shout out to I Vote Madison for doing that, by the way. That's a really great service.
Yeah. Apparently I don't have the full breadth of the data here, but there was a petition signed that made it through, and the council, or I think of the mayor's office actually, were the ones who signed off on it, that they are going to ensure that there's going to be another SRO full-time at that school, which I don't know the acronym, but I know it's a security officer.
School resource officer, yeah.
School resource officer,
and
okay.
they are police. They are active police. They are basically on loan from the police department to the school.
Well, yeah, it's not the solution I would have wanted, but I'm glad they're doing something. And the mayor had expressed in the first meeting that their hands are basically tied. They could use given precedent, they could use nuisance laws to revoke a business license, but they've only done that once in the last decade, and that was for a juvenile detention center that had some breakouts in I think 2017. This is the first I heard about it, but if you want to talk about that.
I do recall that being a big issue in the Madison community. A lot of people were concerned about safety, and so yeah, that I understand that would be a big deal for them to use that precedent, having rarely used it before.
Yeah, and I don't think they're going to do that unless something tragic happens, and of course I hope it doesn't.
Right.
But I think if you're a gun person, you want to open a responsible store, please show a little discretion in where you open it. Yeah, it's this is not great.
I think using some discretion and modesty there would display responsibility. And by locating it right across from the elementary school sort of displays a lack of responsibility that I think probably feeds into parent concerns. Because I'm like you, Jacob. I'm a gun owner. I own multiple guns. I don't plan on giving them up anytime soon. No one's going to take them from me. So, I hear all that. To my conservative brothers and sisters out there who are packing, I get you. But like Tryston said, this is pretty poor taste. I mean, and I like your analogy with the liquor store, Jacob. I feel the exact same way.
Yeah.
I would not want the liquor store right across from the school, just like I wouldn't want the armory right across from the school. And it's just, that's sad that that's becoming an inflection point in the community. I hope that folks can talk through some solutions, but it sounds like maybe it's sort of past that point, and it just is what it is. It sounds like to me. I mean, is that fair enough, Tryston? That it's kind of already a done deal.
I think so. There's a lot of legal barriers to doing anything, and I think that the best case scenario is that nothing gets done because the precedents would mean something really horrible has happened. So,
right.
I hope this is the last time we have to talk about it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Shop there if you want. I don't really care.
So Tryston, in the last 3 or 4 minutes that we have you, any other kind of top lines to be looking out for in Madison City?
Well, June's been a lot more boring, so I can knock it out pretty quick. Madison Utilities is fixing a lot of road segments. There are old sewer trenches collapsing under roadways, so they go in, fix the trench, repave. There's just a lot of them to get to, so they're triaging it. If you've got a dip in your road nearby, it might be a minute because they've got a lot of these to get through. There are a lot of public comments about budgetary concerns. I think a lot of people don't. I think municipal budget sounds very expensive to a lot of people, but $1 million is not a huge thing for a city. But sometimes you'll see the council balk at larger numbers. Like there was a $3 million transfer by Director of Finance Roger Bellamy that Karen Denzine, councilwoman, was questioning. And he got pretty rude to her. At one point, he said something like, "Oh, I don't take orders from you." And just a real guy. That one is also clipped in on one of Madison or I Vote Madison's channels videos. There's been a lot of work by drainage teams in town with all the spring storms. So I want to give them a little bit of public applause. They've been keeping areas from flooding, keeping ditches updated, keeping ditches clear, all of that sort of thing. And the new community center is under construction that I mentioned several months ago. That was one of the mayor's office projects. The council has asked that people not walk onto the construction site if they're not actively, helping construct it. One of the public commenters, you can go watch to find out who was apparently the recipient of that comment. She'd been going out there onto the construction site. So, don't go out there unless you are like there as press or are building it. So.
All right. Well, that sounds like good advice.
Yeah, that's most of it. Yeah, there's more in the details. I recommend everybody go watch the streams. But I guess I'll see you guys next month. That's all I've got for now.
All right. Thanks, Tryston. Appreciate it.
Yeah, really appreciate you. Thanks for keeping an eye on them.
Yeah. Here in the last couple of minutes, I want to make sure that I tell folks in the Alabama audience about this update on the Warrior Met situation. The National Labor Relations Board Administrative Law Judge Melissa M. Oliviero yesterday issued a ruling that found Warrior Met Coal violated national labor law. in its bargaining conduct before, after, and during the UMWA's nearly 2-year strike. Judge Oliviero ordered the company to bargain in good faith immediately. The charge stems from a failure by the company to respond to the union's information requests and failing to provide or unreasonably delaying responses to requests, some going all the way back to March of 2021. The information was necessary, the judge said, and this is from AL.com's reporting on it, and they pulled this from the 60-page ruling from Judge Oliviero. The information was necessary, according to the judge, to determine whether the company, quote, was truly able to pay the union's demands. Here's a longer quote from the judgment. After a union demonstrates the relevancy of the requested information, the burden shifts to the respondent to establish that the information was not relevant, did not exist, or for some other valid and acceptable reason could be furnished to the requesting party. When an employer bases its bargaining position on an asserted inability to pay, the union is entitled to request and review the employer's financial records to assess the employer's representations about its dire financial condition. The UMWA, in their press release, said, "We appreciate this ruling because it validates everything we have been saying about this company for more than 2 years now," said UMWA International President Cecil Roberts, continuing the quote from him. "This company caused this strike by not bargaining in good faith. It extended the strike for nearly 2 years by not bargaining in good faith, and it continues to violate the law today." So I certainly would hope that this changes something, but I'm not bullish on the prospects of that because of the
record?
The record, yeah, the record. Thanks for that, Adam. Because of the record, it's just not good, and the judgment, as far as I can tell, comes with no teeth, no penalty, no fines, or nothing to coerce the employer to begin bargaining in good faith or to acquiesce to any of the union's demands. So no real support here from this from this ruling, other than an affirmation that, yes, they are violating the law, and no, they will not have any consequences for it.
Yeah, it's sort of what we already knew, but, so it's a positive development, but, not one. I'm with you. I don't want to get my hopes up that this is going to, be a game changer. So just sending my love and solidarity to all the UMWA sisters and brothers down there who still have yet to get the contract they deserve.
Yep. So as we're wrapping up here, don't forget we've got a new weekly series called Shop Talk, airing online only every Thursday morning at
9:30, we hope.
Typically, somewhere around there. If you're not on our email list, go to TVLR.fm, sign up for that, leave us a voicemail, donate, all that stuff at TVLR.fm, and go ahead and follow us into overtime. We are going to be taking a quick break and then running live International Teamster President Sean O'Brien's press conference at 11 a.m. Central. Find us on Facebook, YouTube, and until then, until next week on the radio, see ya. All right.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to do. I'll tell how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Folks, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. You are still tuned in to Alabama's only union talk radio show. We are now in the second half of our program. We are now in overtime. We are off the radio. We have freed ourselves from the shackles of the FCC censors, and we have another full half, at least probably an hour and a half of the program, potentially even longer today. I could see it going longer. For the first little bit here, we're going to be reacting to this press conference from the Teamsters International President Sean O'Brien, talking about the state of the negotiations at UPS. It began a couple of minutes ago, so we're going to start at the beginning and go ahead and play that. I do know that there were 2 or 3 Teamsters that told us during this week that they want to call in. So the phone lines are open, and if you want to put your area code in the chat so that we can pull out the Teamsters in case we have more callers than that calling in, feel free to do that so that we can pull you as soon as this press conference wraps up. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can call or text or put your questions in the chat. And with that, Adam, let's go ahead and play this. Sean O'Brien's comments.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for being here today. My name is Sean O'Brien. I'm the General President of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. To my right is our General Secretary Treasurer, Fred Zuckerman. I'm joined here today with our National Negotiating Committee, consisting of all the leadership around the country that represents UPS. But most importantly, we have rank and file members who are on the committee who work for UPS, and they're responsible for making UPS the most profitable company in the delivery business. Now, the purpose of today's meeting and press conference is to let the general public know how hard these Teamsters work for United Parcel Service. Our Teamsters are the best in the business. We represent 340,000 members. Majority of them are part-timers that go to work every single day, move boxes, load those trucks, so truck drivers and feeder drivers can provide goods and services to this country. We want to let the general public know that we are at a crossroads right now with UPS. We're at a crossroads because through the toughest times that we've seen during the pandemic, the one thing that was constant was our Teamsters going to work every single day, making certain that supply chain kept flowing through this country. We had part-timers going to work in these warehouses with total disregard for themselves and their families, putting themselves at risk, putting their families at risk. We had members that died because they went to work to provide these services to the general public. And we want to make certain that UPS rewards not only the part-timers, but also the full-timers and everybody that works as a Teamster at United Parcel Service. As a result of the pandemic, their profits doubled. They weighed $100 billion last year. $100 billion. And now it's time for UPS to reward the people that have made them the success they are. That is our 340 rank and file members. Now, we are in contract negotiations. Our contract is set to expire on July 31st. And our administration has made it clear we will not be working beyond the expiration date without the contract that our members have demanded, but more importantly, the contract that our members deserve. Now, I want to give an update. Historically, the Teamsters Union would go into negotiations 1 year prior to the expiration date, and that's happened over the last 4 cycles. That didn't work well for our members. So we decided a different strategy. We put a deadline on these negotiations. We started negotiations supplementally, where there's 44 supplements on top of the national agreement. And we told UPS that we would not go to the national table unless all 44 supplements were completed. We were able to complete 42 of those supplements. We held up negotiations nationally for another week and a half. And then we got permission from the other 2 supplements who were confident they were going to get it done, and they got it done, to go to the table and demand what our members want. We've been in bargaining since May nationally. We've made progress on 54 changes within this contract. And I want to remind the general public, I want to remind the politicians, and I want to remind the media, this is the largest collective bargaining agreement in any private sector union. We have the opportunity, because of the courage and conviction of our rank and file members that go to work every single day, to set the tone and set the standard high for labor, not just the Teamsters, but the entire labor movement. So we've been in negotiations, and we've gotten some changes. We've gotten some changes that are better our members' lives, but more importantly, take care of their families. But we're not there yet. And we're not there yet because UPS, typically like UPS, thinks that the Teamsters Union are going to concede to their demands. I'm proud to say every change that has been made right now has zero concessions and all gains for our members. And we're going to continue that right through till July 5th. This past week, UPS wasn't moving quick enough. They weren't moving quick enough, so we put a demand. We demanded a last best final offer. And that last best final offer usually is taken to our membership for a vote. UPS came back to the table, knowing we were serious, made some movement, so we made a commitment to resume negotiations. And we are at a point right now where we have the opportunity to do two things. And UPS, ball is in their court. We have to come to an agreement by July 5th in order to get that thing ratified by the expiration date. And we've been clear again, and I know UPS is watching, they're probably hiding in the trees. But we are clear, without a ratified contract, meaning subject to the approval of our 340,000 members, we will not be working. So UPS has two choices to make. They can either go down one road where they want to reward our members who have made them the success they are today, concede to our demands and give us what we deserve, and we will go out there and ratify this agreement. Or they can take the other road, where they don't concede to our demands, they stay loyal to Wall Street and forget about Main Street. And if they do that, they are making a choice to strike themselves, where we will put 340,000 strong Teamsters on the streets till we get what we want, and then UPS will be responsible for stopping supply chain solution through this company. But you know, UPS has a choice. The first road, they can be the model of what it means to be a good employer, what it means to reward the people that have made them a success. You know, UPS is putting out some propaganda that the average UPS driver makes $93,000 per year and $50,000 in benefits. And that is true. That is only true because they have to bargain with us. But they don't tell you the other story where the majority of their employees are part-timers, single mothers, single parents, working 4 in the morning till 8 in the morning in awful conditions, for awful wages. We have part-timers throughout this country that are on food stamps, that are on subsidized housing. Some are homeless. This day and age, when we have companies as profitable, they need to reward their people, and we are not going to stop till we get the contract that we deserve for our 340,000 members. And we're going to use this contract to help change the lives of people that are in this industry non-union, just like Amazon workers right now go to work unprotected, no benefits, no wage increases, no path to a full-time career. We're going to take this contract and say this is what you're going to get when you join the Teamsters Union. So I'm very proud of the work we've done, but we're not done yet. And UPS has less than 84 hours to get this deal done, or less than 84 hours to feel the wrath of the biggest, most powerful organization, and that is the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. I'll open up for questions. Fair. They know that we're not playing around. They know that we have tremendous unity and support throughout this country. Look, the general public loves their UPS drivers, loves their UPS employees. So the last thing they want is a blemish on their reputation. But most importantly, what we want to leverage our power, we want to leverage their profits, and we want our people rewarded. So UPS decided, instead of giving us the last and final, to come to the table, move on their proposal, and they made some movement, but it's not enough. It is not enough. We will determine when it's enough. Great. I appreciate everybody coming out. Look, stay tuned. This is going to be the defining moment, not only for the Teamsters Union, but also organized labor throughout this country. Thank you very much.
All right, folks. That concludes the press conference from the Teamsters International Union on today, Saturday, July the 1st, about the state of the UPS negotiations. And so there's a deadline to get a last, best, and final, and that deadline is July 5th. I believe that's what he said, 84 hours.
Right, July 5th. Originally they had put out June 30th as the deadline for UPS's last best final offer, but the update he was providing today, in case you missed it, is that UPS did budge, and so they didn't come back with their last best and final, but they did make some movement on some areas, and so the negotiations committee agreed to give them a few more days to come up with something. And so we'll see what happens. I mean, like President O'Brien said, the ball is in their court with UPS.
Yeah, and when the camera turned around, I didn't see Will in the chat mentioned that didn't see much press, and that was kind of surprising to me as well, considering how much attention is on this now, and I don't know what the deal was with that, but
yeah, I'm a little disappointed in that as well. Because I've seen more mainstream press kind of jumping on this, at least a little bit. So, unfortunately, I think they're going to take the same tack they took with the rail strike, or the potential rail strike, which is going to be, how could this inconvenience you, the consumer?
Right.
Which is really just gross. But, I noticed that as well. Overall, I appreciate President O'Brien doing this update both for the members and for the general public, because it is important that the public is hearing from the union and knows what's going on, because public support, I think, will be important in this fight, and is important in this fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to respond to some other stuff in the chat, Sapphire Dragon said, even though he said something about UPS does need to give their workers better, I don't think trying to bankrupt your employers is the right way to get better benefits. And he also
I don't think anyone's trying to bankrupt the employer.
Yeah, and he also said the problem with a union like this is that it hurts everyone more than it helps anyone. If you don't like driving for UPS, drive for Amazon. Yeah, that's absurd.
No, I'm sorry. With all due respect, I disagree, because.
Well, not only do you disagree, but the facts of history disagree with the idea that unionization hurts everyone more than it helps anybody. It disagrees with the idea, and the implication here is that going on strike is tantamount to destroying your employer. And obviously there's a certain amount of struggle and kind of warfare that you could say that there is between a union and the employer, but it is obviously not in the workers' interest to destroy the organization. And the only way that would happen is if the organization, if the leadership, the management of UPS was so obstinate as to not come to a reasonable and fair deal with the Teamsters, and that would not be on the Teamsters. That would be on the management of UPS. And so, the implication is that striking is bad, and the historical record just doesn't bear that out. One of the best contracts that Teamsters ever got at UPS came after the 1997 strike. They did, after a reformer won the presidency, and led a movement for improvements on the job.
And those victories are part of why it's typically better to work for UPS as opposed to FedEx or Amazon. I did want to mention we've got 2 callers on the line, so I do believe we've got a 714 area code first, and then a 626.
Yeah, 714 dropped in the chat. That is Jose from the happiest place on earth, Anaheim, California. Jose, thanks for calling in. Appreciate it.
Yeah, let's get Jose on the air.
Good morning, gentlemen. Hope everybody's doing great.
Good morning,
Yeah,
brother.
appreciate
Doing
you.
good. So you're a part-timer at UPS. You're a steward. You called in last week and gave us some.
I was a steward. I'm no longer a steward. Now I'm just a rank and file activist that,
Gotcha.
that educates the rank and file when they have questions or they need to know something. So I'm no longer a steward, but I am an active rank and file.
Well, good deal, good deal. Yeah, so rank and file member, former steward of the Teamsters at UPS in Anaheim, part-timer at UPS. You called in last week, talked about some of the state of things, and we just released a clip of that call yesterday, and looks like folks really appreciated it. Folks really liked it. It's one of the most viewed videos on our channel actually right now. So that one really kind of blew up. And, so what are some of your reactions to the press conference?
Well, regarding the press conference, and there's a great book out there called Outside the Box, Corporate Media, Globalization, and the UPS Strike, written by Professor Deepa Kumar,
Mm-hmm.
And in that book, she talks about how in the beginning of the 97 strike, leading up to and the beginning of the 97 strike, there wasn't that much media coverage. We had one question from the press corps today. So it was after like that first week then, or during that first week, the Teamsters started getting more media publicity, in corporate media, because we all know corporate media is just the lapdog of the ruling class. And I guess of this individual that made the comment that we should go work for Amazon. I'm like, if I want to go work for Amazon, I'm going to go start Amazon, and I'm going to try to organize Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
On that note. And I'm glad that President O'Brien mentioned the plight of part-timers.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us are receiving government assistance. Some of us are living in our cars, and some of us are unfortunately unhoused and just find shelter and a place to rest their head wherever they can that's peaceful. So that's why myself with a bunch of other rank and file part-timers called Teamsters Mobilize have urged and have abdicated for a $25 starting pay and 75 cents for every year of service and a 5% wage increase. We're not trying to bankrupt the company. We're just trying to provide stability for our fellow rank and file members. Because one Teamster, one worker living on the street is not right. That's a struggle that all labor has to fight. Once you find out that even one member, a dues paying member, is living on the street, that's unhoused,
right?
That should be a fight for all of us to take up. So I applaud General O'Brien for talking about that. But we've had internal updates ourselves. We had one last Wednesday,
mm-hmm.
and then 3 weeks ago. I just wished that when giving updates to us, the membership, that be a little bit more detailed with those updates. Be a little bit more transparent. Now, last week we had the leaked UPS economic counterproposal, which in fact UPS later on in the week admitted it was a leak and said they came back with a better, more significant offer or something like that. I just wish we would have seen both. We would have seen that second counterproposal from UPS and what was our proposal for UPS when it comes to the economics. Now it's the all eyes on me because it's the economic package. How much are we going to get in wages? How much are we going to get in wage increase? How much are we going to get in pension contribution? How much are we going to get in healthcare contribution? I just wish we would have seen that. We still don't know. I still don't know. All you hear is rumors. Oh, they offered this, they offered that, but we don't know. And at some point, it gets frustrating. You can't be telling us, June 30th is we want our last best and final offer. Then we wake up June 30th. Okay, we're going to get something because we're done. We're done just playing these games with UPS. And then you find out they extended it to July 5th. You're like, wait, what happened to June 30th is going to be where we're going to get the last best and final offer from UPS.
Right.
Because when you work for UPS, when you go through the system, right? You start as a part-timer. Most of them start as a part-timer, and then you go into driving, your regular package car driver, or you become a feeder. Once you go through that, you understand the struggle. Now, some drivers kind of, once they get their homes, they get into the middle class. Some of them just forget that they were ever part-timers. But once you go through that grind, you understand all the harassment that you go through, whether in the part-time ranks or the full-time ranks. You go through the harassment. So the public really doesn't know how much, we go through on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
But once you go through that, you just, to me, you just want to fight, because and especially now during contract season, and especially after record profits after record profits after record profits, and when they could have done the right thing in 2020 during COVID, when we had the lockdown, all UPS said was, well, there's a contract in place. They couldn't negotiate economics. They negotiated other things. Oh, you out here in the Southwest, if you work through your vacation, you get time and a half. Oh, part-timers could use their personal vehicle to go deliver packages. But to give us a significant bump to show that you actually appreciate us, no, they never did. So, you go through that trial of being a part-timer or full-timer, whatever it may be, and you remember 2020, you're like, dude, I'm all in. I'm all in now. Some of us have to save money, and probably some of us haven't saved money, and some of us live beyond our means. But at this crucial moment, we all need to stick together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really echo your desire for more specifics. And there was somebody in the chat that said the exact same thing. I wish you would have given more specifics on the particular policies they're advocating for. I think it would be helpful for the general public to be aware of that. And really, they tied their hands by agreeing to ground rules at the beginning. They agreed to NDAs regarding regarding both their proposals and the company's proposals. And so they do, at this point, legally speaking, have to be somewhat vague because of the NDAs they've signed at the beginning of this contract that were unnecessary. You don't have to agree to those at the beginning of negotiations. They're not necessary, and the employer cannot make you do them. They are not mandatory subjects of bargaining, ground rules, and so you don't have to do that. That's one of the things that Jane McAlevey really stresses, is that you should not agree to ground rules during negotiations, particularly ones that restrict your ability to communicate with your members.
It's funny. She wrote a piece for the Nation, and I've read all Jane McAlevey's books, No Shortcuts, Fight Like Hell. I forgot the name of the new one. But anywho, she wrote a piece for the Nation. And I was reading it, some of it, okay, I'm a fan. But then I was like, wait, other parts I was like, hold on, Jane, I don't think you quite get the bigger picture, because you, like as you mentioned, we don't have to accept any ground rules. That's just voluntary. It's not mandatory by the NLRA or anything, right? But we accepted an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, and that in UPS and Teamster world, you've heard about this term called brownout, which is the lack of information being sent out by the IBT during negotiations. This was just the lipstick on a pig when we called the MDA. Now they give us updates, but they're superficial at best. You're like, okay, what was agreed upon? Okay, what are the contractual language? Because in UPS, when you go to agreements and you go to the panel, they will, any ambiguity when it comes to contractual language, they will exploit it 100%. And now another problem, we just heard O'Brien talk about concessions.
Right.
Now out here in the Southwest, we're going to have a sitting arbitrator. And I know Jane McAlevey has advocated for a sitting arbitrator, but when you deal with UPS, even strong, clear, defined contractual language, they will manipulate the semantics of it, and they'll just twist it around, right? Now we have a sitting arbitrator. They're going to interpret that contractual language, and what was meant by the contractual language is going to be defined something else with, if there's a possibility, correct, by the sitting arbitrator, right? It's like the Supreme Court holding precedence for so long, then he comes to an activist court, what came before gets done. Oh, those courts were wrong, upholding those decisions were wrong. We've just seen it, but that sitting arbitrator is a concession, because UPS will violate the contract, they'll violate the contractual language, and now you have a sitting arbitrator there. They're just going to interpret it the way they interpret it, and we're going to just be like, what? And then two, if you're an activist, if you're a rank and file activist, or a member with high seniority, who's to say they won't go after you? Because how here in the Southwest, we and many places in the country, we have dishonesty.
Right.
You're stealing company time, or you doing this. Oh, you were talking to blah 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 for so long. Why were you over there? To have a sitting arbitrator is a bad idea.
Yeah.
Because the way they're going to interpret things is going to be the new precedent. So that concession, that is a concession in my book. And if we don't get $25 for part-timers and $55 top rate for RPCD, what they call regular package car drivers, then that's another concession. Because you're not giving us wages that are staying above inflation and having real purchasing power.
Right. Yeah, I think that all makes a lot of sense. And one other thing that you mentioned that I just want to agree with is the concern about the continual, which they're still not material as of yet, but the kind of going back, setting a line and then allowing it to be pushed back with the supplementals, not beginning national negotiations until supplementals are completed. And actually, the Southern supplemental has still not been ratified by the membership, as far as I can tell.
They'll get the supplements will get ratified with the national master. They all get ratified at the same time. So when we get our ballots, they'll say, yes or no for the national master, yes or no for the Southwest, Western region supplement, yes or no for the Southwest sort and package riders, yes or no for the Southwest utility and addendum. So they'll get it once we got the whole package. But even in the Southern supplement, there's a lot of individuals that think it's just a sellout contract.
Yeah.
So,
that's actually that we got a message last week or the week before from a Teamster in Texas who may be on the line now, and we'll go ahead and let you go here soon. We've got 3 others on the line that were concerned about the Southern supplement, so we'll see what they have to say. Appreciate your time, Jose. Good luck, solidarity, and I'll be on the picket line with y'all. Not in Anaheim, but in Huntsville when and if you go on strike.
Solidarity and all power to the workers.
Thanks, brother.
To the workers. Yep, thanks. Appreciate it. Let's go ahead. The one that called in right after Jose was the 626. Is that right?
That's right. Let's get our 626 on the air. All right, 626, you're on the air.
What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, my name is Louis.
Luis, yeah, you call. You sent us a message yesterday about a non-Teamster or a non-UPS story. Give us a rundown of that really quick, because we do have some other callers on the line and we want to get to that. But the situation that you were talking about seems important and not good. Talk to us about it.
Yeah. Okay. We actually we joined the Teamsters in May, and we voted the Teamsters in our facility. I work for Smart Final, and it's a grocery store here in California with over 250 stores, I've worked there for 23 years, and they got bought out by a Mexican company, Chedraui, also known as Bodega Latina. And now they gave us a letter saying that we're no longer employed as of 2024. We're terminated.
Wow.
So we just want to bring some light to our story, and because they're retaliating on us going Teamsters. So we went Teamsters Local 630 in Los Angeles, and the company just retaliated on us. And they don't care how many years of service we've had. They're cutting our pensions. They're cutting our everything. We're basically terminated as of 2024.
Are they closing the facility or terminating everybody that's in the bargaining unit and replacing y'all?
No, they're replacing us. They're gonna move. They say they're gonna move to a different city, but as us in our facility, we're terminated. Also, another facility in Riverside. So we're the City of Commerce, and also the facility in Riverside, California, is also being shut down. So it's over 600 employees that they're terminating, but they come out to the media saying they're hiring so many employees, but that's all false.
Wow. And how are y'all responding with the union? Has there been much fight back or any hope coming from that side?
Okay, so the union's helping us out a bunch. They're using every resource they can. We actually did 2 picketings on Wednesday and Thursday in front of the stores. That was our first move. We're waiting on the Teamsters to let us know what else we got to do. But just basically retaliation for going union on them and not being able to do what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Man, I really hate to hear that, and definitely sending all of our love and solidarity to y'all, and keep us posted on this. Like, I'm not familiar with this grocery store. I haven't seen one in our area.
Yeah.
But yeah,
there's 239 in California.
Yeah.
There's 239 in California, Nevada, and Arizona, also in Mexico. But it's just it's a big corporate giant coming over from Mexico and destroying American jobs, basically.
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
That's terrible. Appreciate you letting us know that.
Yeah,
Lucas.
and please do keep us posted on this campaign and let us know.
And we are behind the UPS drivers as well. We're Teamsters, so we're supporting their cause as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, brother.
Thank you
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. We've got 2 other callers on the line. If anybody else wants to get in the queue, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. Let's go ahead and get the next one on the air.
Sure thing. Yeah, that's a wild story about this grocery store, and that's something like, and we've talked about boycotts before, and it can be hit and miss with effectiveness and all that, but that seems like one that the labor movement could target with a boycott.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, Free American 2020 in the chat says, the caller gave the employer much of his adult life. It sells, and then they want to throw the workers to the curb. I mean, that's absolutely true, and we've seen that
23 years of service.
Yeah, and we saw this with the paper mill that closed in Jay. That 1880s was the beginning of paper production in May, in Jay, Maine. And they just closed up. There's no more paper being produced in Jay anymore. And there are, folks that I talked to up there that between all of their family, that's just the family that's alive today, they have given 379 years to paper production in Jay, and it's all gone. Very, very sad. Very sad story. Terrible story coming out of California. Certainly all solidarity to them and wish them the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we've got a 918 caller coming up next here. Let me get 918 on the line. 918, you're on the air. Appreciate you holding. Let us know who you are and where you're calling from.
I'm a Dallas-based Teamster out of Mesquite, and I have a lot of concerns about the Southern Supplement contract for UPS. That's why I'm calling. I actually contacted the station like a week ago to talk about this. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can. Adam, would you care to turn him up a little bit
I've got
for
it.
me?
Yeah, I've got it cranked up as high as I can.
Gotcha,
Unfortunately.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I can still hear him. It's just a little low. And you said you're from Dallas. You're a Dallas-based Teamster with UPS, and yeah, you did. I gotten a couple messages about the Southern Supplement and concerns about it. So what are some of the worries about the Southern Supplement right now?
So for me, my biggest worry is definitely this new change to how they are going to handle no call, no show discipline, where basically 3 days of the company declaring you no call, no show is now a cardinal infraction. You come back, they'll walk you out, they'll say you're fired. The union will have to fight for you at panel, or I guess we're going to have a new arbitrator too, it sounds like. So it's going to go through an arbitration process, which nobody knows what that's going to be like. And this isn't how it used to work. So this is a definite concession. What we used to have is called a 48-hour letter, where if the company claims you to be no call, no show, they will send a letter to your home to tell you to show back up to work, to give you notice, give you time to call your business agent if there's an emergency or something going on, or if they're lying or whatever. Now you don't have any of that. Now it's just 3 days they declare you no call and you're gone. I recognize a lot of jobs are like that. Even a lot of our UPS regional contracts have language like that. In the documents that we've received so far, we don't have anything for emergencies saying that, like, oh, if it's your 3 days no call and it's a legitimate emergency, they'll consider. No, I haven't seen anything like that. And it's I've had personal experience where just countless times I've had supervisors at UPS. They're the most dishonest people that will file your times in incorrectly, or file a call in as a no call because they're angry at you. Earlier this year, I had COVID. I had to take 2 weeks off per my doctor. And the first week, they filed all that as call-ins, normal, whatever. The second week was all no-call, no-shows from Monday through Friday. So that's just, the company's just blatantly dishonest. And we're giving them more power on this non-concessionary contract is ridiculous to me. I also have other issues. We get, Sean O'Brien on that call mentioned how we worked through this pandemic. We don't have that many days off in our contract. The one thing we get for this pretty big concession is we get a 1 extra week of vacation. Instead of going at 10 years, it's going to be at 9 years. We'll get 3 weeks of vacation. No increase in option days, which are like our sick days. Nothing substantial to make it so that management can discipline us less for being, for having a no call, or for having an option day, which is ridiculous to me. Throughout the entire pandemic, management was constantly giving people with COVID discipline letters saying they needed to show up back to work, they're whatever. We worked through all of that, and now we're getting very, very little and being told this is a life-changing contract. I don't really want to make this a referendum on leadership. I'm not happy with this contract, but I really just have to get the word out and advocate everybody vote no. I also am with Teamsters Mobilize. If you're a part-timer, please look us up and get involved. We every part-timer knows with how few hours they give us, we need a $25 minimum wage to make our lives functional practically, because, they rely on our labor, and we keep working here for benefits and healthcare and all that stuff. But they barely give you enough to keep coming back into work. And there's definitely a few other issues on the Southern Supplement I don't like, but some of it's vague. They haven't given us the full language yet, like Jose was saying. They've given us a 4-page document stating like real briefly all the changes, which I speculate was initially leaked, honestly.
Right.
It has been officially shared by my local on their Instagram, on like an Instagram story that disappeared, which is interesting. Yeah, so that's I guess the situation I have.
Yeah, and somebody really else, and you may be in conversation with this person, but they also mentioned the issues with the no call, no show, the worry about that, and that this person had management routinely code her absences as no call, no shows when that was not the case, and you know, no doubt if this does make it into the contract. In cases where management incorrectly codes an absence, you'd probably able to win that grievance and probably be able to win it reasonably easily. But the issue is that that's going to create a lot more work for the stewards, and it's also going to create hardship for the member who has to go through this, right? You know, I mean, even if ultimately you do get back pay, if it takes you a month, 2 weeks, 2 months, 3 months before you get paid while this grievance is working out, that can put a lot of people in a lot of trouble, right?
Yeah, that can put you in a hole that
and
it's hard to dig out of.
Part-timers, if you're no call, no showing, or if they're claiming you are because you're sick, like I had COVID, what if you need your medical insurance right then? You know, what if you're in a situation where you can't afford to have your medical insurance just drop off a cliff for you, and that's exactly what they're going to do. That's you know, that's a real fear. You know, if you're a part-timer like me, maybe the wages aren't going to put you under because you probably have support elsewhere in your life, but the healthcare is killer.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing this person mentioned, and I'm wondering if you're having some of these concerns as well, is that that y'all are going to be giving now the company 2 weeks to correct payment errors instead of the current 2 days.
Yeah, that's what the document and what our principal officer has seemed to indicate to us. I have heard from other Teamsters that seems to be an error, that they might actually have reached an agreement where in 2 weeks there will be additional penalties on the company. But from what I've seen and read and heard from my principal officer, that is not the case. They'll have 2 weeks before they actually have to get it corrected, and there'll be no penalty and pay in that time, which is ridiculous because when you know they'll tell you, oh, don't worry, we'll get it fixed. But if you really harass them and you get to like the top level supervisor for a building or whatever, they can just punch in a few numbers on a computer. They'll get you a check in like literally like 2 days. They are literally capable of doing that at any point. And they're telling us they have this new 2 weeks thing because they have a whole new payroll system that UPS is rolling out that they're so confident in that they'll never have like a payroll error again, is basically what they're saying. The company's saying, which is fine, but then why are we rolling back our protections? Even if they're the union selling it as, oh, well, we'll have additional penalty pay, but penalty pay doesn't stop you from being evicted in the moment, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I could imagine a scenario where you give the company that but you get something that's worth it in return. You know, I could potentially see like, okay, if we change the initial penalty from 2 days to 2 weeks, then, you know, the penalty's like double or triple or something like that. Or you know, there's a significant, you know, I can imagine a way that this makes sense, but certainly in a vacuum, giving the company 12 more days to fix payment errors is just not acceptable, right? Something else that they mentioned is the National, this is from this message, the National looks like it's going to keep cameras in the car. We are going to be assured that they are deactivated, which, like, I mean, cameras that are deactivated, why not? If they're not activated, then just don't have them in the car, right? If they're not operable. So that's bizarre to me.
Right.
But there's no word about the audio, meaning the company could collect private conversations between members and stewards about their cases, or, you know, audio just generally that I don't want my freaking boss to have, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a complete invasion of privacy. I think it's a real big concern. You know, if we could get assurances that the camera lens has been shattered by a screwdriver and the microphone was cut off with scissors or something.
Yeah.
And whatever other data they wanted to keep, sure, maybe. But just what we've been told by our leadership is that they will be assured and given the union will be proved to that the cameras are off, which you know, a camera that's turned off just implies you can just turn it back on. You know, I don't really trust that.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't either. That's sketchy as hell. Sketchy as hell. I wouldn't trust it. Very concerning. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about as far as the Southern or the national supplement?
There's something that's I feel like it's on the tip of my tongue. My biggest issue is definitely part-time pay. Part-timers need to get paid more. I've been working here since 2018. I started at 1035, which is a joke for the kind of labor. This is the hardest job I've ever had, and I've had jobs that were very hard that paid quite a bit, and this is very hard and paid almost nothing. After 5 years of service, I'm at $18 almost, which is okay, but you know, this isn't good enough to live off of. You know, they lie to you about what hours you can expect. They lie to you about what your start times will be, so you can't really plan around what your thing is. You know, in the South, we find out about our start time when we go home from work. The next, you know, we'll find out about it for the following day.
That's crazy.
So, you know, part-timers need a living wage.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's insane. Definitely need more, certainly more pay, but also, you know, I think more stability. I did not realize that about how unstable part-timers work weeks were. That's like restaurant industry scheduling, which is not acceptable, but that's what you expect in the restaurant industry. You don't expect to work for UPS and not know what the hell you're doing tomorrow, right? That's bizarre.
It feels so dishonest to me, if I could take one more second. When I got hired, it was painted on the wall that for the HR building, that the start time, you know, they had all the different shifts painted to the wall like it was a foundation of the institution. And it was 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. was when I could expect my shift to be. My shift almost never starts at 10 a.m. You know, usually on Monday it starts at 11 in these hot summers, and then by Tuesday they sit at 12 and then 12:15. They do whatever they want with the start times. And you know, when you get off, then they make it so that all the traffic's crazy. And what's absurd about this is that the feeder drivers get to the building at the same time every day. So there's no reason for them to do that. It's a pure tactic, I'm sure, to stress out the workers and get them to get off the clock and not demand their guaranteed hours, frankly.
Right. All right. Well, I appreciate the call. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sorry for taking so much time.
No, I appreciate it. It was
great.
Absolutely. It was good information. We've got two more in the queue. Let's bring on Adam, the 352 area code caller.
Yeah, we've had them waiting quite a while.
352.
All right, let me get them going here.
And you know, for folks just jumping in, we got several people that are watching us live right now. 100 folks watching, 27 thumbs up. Let's those are rookie numbers. Let's get those up. And we've had 3 Teamsters in a row call in, 2 working for UPS, and 1 working for Smart and Final, if I remember right, about a that's a grocery store chain that was purchased by a Mexican company that is now firing the newly unionized with the Teamsters workforce of 600 some odd people, including people who have been with the company for 23 years. I mean, it's amazing to think about spending, like somebody else in the chat said, selling 23 years of your life. I mean, for most people, for the majority of people walking around, 23 years is the majority of your life to a company, and then they're just going to cut you loose. That's insane.
Of your adult life, yeah. And
or the majority of your life, period. 23 years is like, 90% of my life. It would be a much lower percentage of your life, Adam, but still.
Yeah, and maybe this is a good time just to remind folks that labor creates all wealth, and that vast majority of people in this country and on this planet have nothing to sell but their labor, and that's how we survive, is by doing so, and we spend most of our waking time at work. So with that preamble out of the way, let's get 352 on the air. All right, 352, you are on the air. Let us know who you are and where you're calling from.
Hello? Hi. Can you guys hear me?
We can, yeah.
Sound great.
Welcome.
Right on. My name is Brandon, and I'm from Cincinnati.
Brandon from Cincinnati. I think I saw you in the chat. Are you also a UPS Teamster?
No, sir. But I actually work for Amazon.
Oh, okay. Well, great to hear from you.
Yeah,
so what's on your mind?
Well, first, I just wanted to say I have a great channel. Love your guys' show. I found it just a few months ago. And there's not a whole lot like it on YouTube, really, and it's just really cool, the radio aspect and all that stuff.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Definitely, I love you guys' coverage, and your guest today was awesome. And well, anyways, I'm sorry, but the reason why I'm calling in today is because I work at Amazon at the Kentucky airport, and we're trying to get a union in there, and we're doing it under the banner of ALU. Not sure if folks have heard about any of that.
I have actually. I've seen a little bit of it on Twitter. Some stuff about a Kentucky. Some workers at an Amazon facility in Kentucky working to unionize under ALU with mixed success, is my understanding.
And I should add, just for the audience, ALU is the Amazon Labor Union, that is the independent union that was successful in organizing a Staten Island warehouse. I guess that was last year now. And so Chris Smalls is, my understanding, still the president of the ALU. So yeah, just want to put that out there for the audience. And Brandon, really, tell us about that. That's interesting.
That's correct. So we're trying to organize under their banner, and things are going pretty well. I just got to say, so I'm from Cincinnati, and but I grew up in the South, and I had never worked for a place that had a union or really tried to successfully unionize. And this whole situation is really new to me, but it's really inspiring, and I think it's going really well. I personally signed up about a dozen people.
Wow.
And I don't know. I just I think maybe people have heard about what's happening literally right across the street from us. We have a DHL facility right across the street, and half of their folks just successfully voted to unionize with the Teamsters. And so that's been a really inspiring thing for us too. And if people didn't know about that, I just wanted to call in and bring awareness to what's going on there in northern Kentucky, and literally right across the street from each other. We're trying to unionize there. So
that's so cool. What's the name of the company again?
So I'm at Amazon, and then right across the street.
Yeah, the one that unionized across the street from you.
A DHL.
Okay. Yeah. Another delivery service. Yeah. Another part of the delivery industry. Interesting. Yeah, that's really exciting. So okay. We've got the Teamsters organizing DHL across the street, and y'all have an active campaign going. Sounds like it's feeling good. It sounds like you're feeling some energy from it and the good vibes from it, and I really love to hear that, because just having conversations with fellow workers and talking about our lives and our experiences at work and how we can come together and how when we do come together we can do great and amazing things. There's something very powerful in that, and so I want to thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, well, check this out, Adam, and this is really kind of the detriment of not having the Last Week in Southern Labor segment anymore. Maybe we ought to put some time into trying to revamp that. But here's a press release from the Teamsters on DHL Express workers join Teamsters. This was put out on 28 April of this year. The International Brotherhood of Teamsters scored a massive organizing victory for more than, get this, 1,100 DHL Express workers at the Cincinnati Northern Kentucky International Airport. That's wild. How did I not see that? 1,100 workers in basically the South joining the Teamsters. That's wild. I can't believe that I didn't see that. Ramp and tug workers voted to join the Teamsters Local 100 in Cincinnati after a year-long campaign for representation. The victory is a testament to what can be achieved when workers are united for a better future, said Bill Hamilton, director of the Teamsters Express Division. Negotiations will begin for a first Teamster contract for DHL CVG workers following certification of the election. Yeah, wild stuff. Thank you for that, Brandon. I appreciate that. I had no idea.
No problem. And it's just something, like I said, I just want to bring awareness to it because I feel like, we've gotten a little bit of coverage. There's been like a more perfect union video I saw talking about the DHL workers and what they've been going through. And I just got to say, it's their conditions that those folks have been working under a lot harsher than what we have to work under across the street. Yeah, it's crazy. And that's really what they organized under, what were the conditions, and they won overwhelmingly to their vote, if you look at that. So, and I just want to say thank you to you guys and solidarity with the Teamsters UPS workers about to go on strike here. So,
yeah. Absolutely. Thanks for calling in, Brandon from Ohio.
Yeah,
appreciate it. And feel free to call in anytime with updates on your campaign in the Kentucky Amazon.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, really appreciate it. Love to hear that and appreciate the kind words about the program. Yeah, I recognize you from the chat. And it's great that there are new folks who are getting turned on to the Valley Labor Report. I hope that folks find something valuable. I know we got some new viewers and listeners this morning, and this is what we do. We talk about working people and the struggles of working people. We talk about how we can revitalize the labor movement here, particularly in the South. And we talk about news and politics from a working class perspective. And so, welcome to everyone who is tuning in this morning, and appreciate all the calls, all the engagement in the chat. Sounds like we've had a very lively chat.
Yeah, it does look very lively. I want to take respond to a little bit of that, but that is a good idea, Adam. While we've got some maybe more people that are listening to us, we can just do a quick introduction and let folks know who we are. Adam and I are both union members here in Alabama. And we have a union radio program that we also stream to where you're watching us now, YouTube and Facebook. We are on FM radio on 3 stations across the South, 2 in Alabama, 1 in Louisiana, always open to more. And we, like Adam said, we try to cover the news from a working class union perspective. We have guests ranging from rank and file union members to workers that are in non-union workplaces, talking about their working conditions, talking about trying to make them better. We have staff organizers from unions, authors, activists, researchers, and organizers, people from a lot. We certainly have a primary focus on the South, but we do have people come on that we bring on from across the country. Today, earlier in the program, we spoke to Lee Harris from the American Prospect, which is a very good magazine, about the construction of a semiconductor plant in Arizona that has really been mired with a lot of issues. And even though the Biden administration is touting this plant as kind of the example that they want to follow, but it's not good. We're, billions of taxpayer dollars are going towards the construction of this facility, subsidizing TSMC, which is the company that's building it. And there have been multiple deaths on the construction site. They are using non-union labor. They are currently seeking help from the United States government to bring in more migrant workers, even though they have not even tried to engage the trade unions to tap that resource of American labor, of union labor. Very bad stuff going on over there in Arizona, and it's not a good sign that the Biden administration is pushing that. So we talked to Lee Harris earlier in the program. You can rewind and check that interview out, and definitely check out our YouTube channel. We've got several, we've got like literally thousands of videos covering a lot of topics. So I appreciate everybody.
Yeah, and just for folks, again, who are new, most of the interviews with guests that we have, we do clip as their own YouTube videos. And
we're going to be clipping all these calls as well, too.
So, yeah, definitely check that out. We've had some great guests this summer. We've had candidates. We had, political or a presidential candidate on earlier this summer. We had the great Adolph Reed Jr. on. And also just want to shout out our Shop Talk series that we do on Thursdays. It is online only. And so it's on YouTube and Facebook and podcast as well. All of our stuff is available as podcast. And so on Shop Talk, it's less newsy. It's more history and training and education, all with a labor focus. And so we talk about, how to organize. We talk about how to get involved as a member. We talk about what happened this month in labor history. Those are some of the things we talk about. This past week, I spoke with Ellen David Friedman from Labor Notes. I recommend y'all check that out. That actually is very relevant to the conversations we've been having today, because we talked about, what to do when your union breaks your heart. She does a very popular training with Labor Notes about that. And so, check out this past week's Shop Talk, especially you Teamsters who are having some mixed feelings right now. I definitely am sensitive to that, and I'm glad we've heard some rank and file perspectives. It's exciting that reformers have won the presidency and won many offices within the union, but obviously you can't just elect the right folks and everything's going to work out okay. It doesn't work inside our unions. It doesn't work inside our city councils or school boards or any level of government. That's just not the way it works, right? And so, it's good to have these nuanced discussions today, and really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got one more caller.
So sorry about that. I didn't realize we still had a caller. Yeah. So let's get you on the air. All right, 323, you're on the air.
Hey guys, this is Will from Teamsters Local 396.
Hey Will, thanks for calling in.
Yeah, for sure, man. I just want to say that your show is one of the most important shows that I found on the internet, and you guys highlighting what's going on in the South is one of the most important projects for labor to have. So, shout out to you guys and cheers for that. And
thank you.
Also, cheers for you having this platform and letting us speak. Right. I heard a lot of Teamsters. We're actually workers talking to each other today. So that is awesome.
Right.
That's number one. Yeah, and I just want to tell that guy that called in earlier that I just literally live down the street from the Commerce Warehouse for Smart and Final, and I have a Smart and Final that just opened up in my town, and one of the clerks there is trying to organize the store, and so we'll see what happens with that. And I talk to her all the time, and we're in contact with each other. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what to do or how to point her into the direction of 630, but we'll see what we can do now that I heard the story. Because what they're doing to these what they did to these Teamsters is very egregious, and I find it very disgusting.
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
just a really disgusting story. I'm serious. I'm not going to shop there, and I'm going to tell my family members not to shop there anymore. And I don't understand too why what happened to an injury to one is an injury to all, right? We should have more, the Teamsters as a whole, should be mobilizing against stuff like this. You know, we should be out there picketing these stores. You know what I mean? But we're not. I know we're all busy, right? We have campaigns all over the place. We have our contract campaign right now, and we have the Amazon workers, you know, and shout out to all the Teamsters that are holding it down throughout California. I think there's three warehouses now that are on ULP strikes. So shout out to all those people. And yeah, I mean, we need to get more active and more militant, you know, across the board. But so anyways, yeah, I want to go back to the contract. And I just want to echo what Jose said and what you guys were talking about and saying, you know, we need more transparency in this contract. You know, we want to know what the economic proposals are from our side. You know, we don't know what it is, right? So I think that's a problem, and I think we should work, you know, as a whole, as you know, as activists to reform that, you know, that these non-disclosure agreements. I think that's not right, because it keeps us in the dark and it creates, you know, division, you know, and it's just not helpful.
Right.
So that's number one.
Yeah, and I was just going to add there to your point that when there's an absence of information, your mind wanders, and your mind sometimes takes you to bad places, and so people. That's how rumors get going. That's how misinformation gets going. That's how, you know, bad feelings start developing and festering. Sometimes even before there's even a reason necessarily, you know. But that's the problem there, because ultimately, as the union, your power comes from your membership, and so if the membership is not in the loop, you know, you're ultimately you're weakening your own power, and so. You know, I understand why, you know, union leaders sometimes take that approach, but I think they're missing the boat there, because your rank and file membership, when engaged and educated, is the most powerful force you have.
Yeah. And somebody mentioned Jane McAlevy's new book about bargaining strategies. At some point this summer, I think I'd like to bring her on the show to talk about that, because that
would be interesting.
There's some really good, it seems to me there's some really good advice in there, and it makes a lot of intuitive sense. You know, just being open with folks, you know, our members and our brothers and sisters in our union. We are adults. You know, sometimes we're going to disagree about this or that or the other thing in the contract. We may disagree about the importance of a certain clause, but I do think that free and open debate about those things is going to be better and healthier for the union than not. So.
Yep, I agree. I think open bargaining is the great McAlevey says right in her book is the way to go. But yeah, I just want to real quick before I let you guys go. There was a story coming out of Texas, right? And it was an Amazon worker that literally was on a porch and he was gonna pass out from the heat. So this is a big issue. I mean, and it's just not Amazon drivers, it's UPS drivers, right? I suffer from heat illness and it knocked me out for 2 months, and it wasn't a good feeling, you know. And you know, the pandemic as well, it's really hit our bodies. That's another thing nobody's talking about, right? The effects of the pandemic on people, right? And this country did a bad job of diagnosing people if they had COVID or not. You know, a lot of people don't know that they caught the disease, you know, but you know, they're still working in these conditions, right? It attacks your brain, it attacks your cardiovascular system, right? And you're out there working in 100 degrees, and especially in the truck where it could reach up to 150 degrees in the back. I mean, that's a problem. You know, we need to negotiate our contracts and put more health and safety inside of them, you know. And I'm hoping the Teamsters, you know, are you know, once we take a look at the contract and it's released to us, that those health and safety issues are addressed. But yeah, that's a big concern for me, because in Southern California it gets super hot. I know in the South too it gets super hot, you know. And we need more than just like a couple 15-minute breaks and a lunch sometimes, because we're out there for 10 hours, you know, or 12 hours, you know what I mean, in the heat. So that's a big, huge issue for me. And those are some of the things that we're struggling with right now. You know what I mean? And not to mention that climate change and global warming is changing the world in the way, you know, we're going to do business in the future. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, having air conditioning in the trucks is a good step forward. But like, you know, we said before, I mean, UPS is going to drag its feet and replacing the trucks. I've seen it before. I'm driving a truck right now. It's probably like 10, 15 years old. You know what I mean? And they just put a fan up there that blows hot air at me all day long. You know what I mean? So that's not really going to be much of a help, until we get those ACs in there. And so that's a big issue for me. I mean, also, like Jose was talking about earlier, cardinal sin language. That's a big issue for me, especially related to the heat, right? I mean, once you exhausted your 2 15-minute breaks and it's 115 degrees out there, and you're like, you feel dizzy and your mouth is dry, and you pull over, go to the store, get yourself a bottle of water or some Gatorades or whatever, the manager is going to see right there, hey, why were you, what's this? Why were you there for 5 minutes? What's going on? Right. And not to mention, guys, the amount of harassment that this company inflicts on its workforce is unbelievable, right? With the camera, the invasive technology they have in there, they know if your seatbelt's on or off. They know how many times you open and close your bulkhead door. They know, they know everything, right? And I think that this technology, I mean, AI is hitting everybody, right? And I just got hit with the AI infraction myself at work, right? And it was a ridiculous infraction that the manager told me, right? Confronted me about. I was going on to, driving down the street, and as a professional driver, I'm trained to stop before a stale green, what they call a stale green light. Right. So was it the smoothest braking I ever did? Probably not. But was it a hard brake? No, it wasn't. But the AI thought it was, and so there I am on report. And guess what? I don't know if we could say this, but I'm on the shit list. Yeah. The next day. You know what I mean? Right. That's the kind of stuff that UPSers face on a daily basis. Not to mention unfair production standards, right? Some of us are going out with 200 deliveries in our trucks with 150 degrees in the back of the truck. And not to mention some of those packages, I mean, they're just not like little 1-pound bags that you get from Macy's. Right. We're delivering I've delivered refrigerators. I've delivered whole beds. The bed frame probably weighs like 100 pounds. I mean, these are the issues that UPS workers face on a daily basis, and like I said, the stealing time stuff when we need to pull over and after we exhausted all our breaks after a 10, 12-hour day needs to be addressed. It just has to. And also one last thing with this cardinal sin stuff, what's to keep UPS from firing activists like myself or Jose or anybody else, because we're just trying to exercise our human right and dignity to get a drink of water or whatever. You know what I mean? I mean, those are things that we need to look at in this contract that are very important. So, hey guys, I really appreciate your time. I gotta get out of here. I got something to do right now, and I really appreciate you guys and what you guys are doing. Really much love for the show, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, brother, appreciate it, and thanks for hanging on the line.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you.
You got it, guys. We'll talk to you later.
All right, talk soon.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, really appreciate that. And the heat is such an issue. As someone who was working in the heat this week.
Yeah, me too. You were having to work outside, but my AC wasn't working great, and it got up to 80 degrees in my house, and I was sweating, writing up a grievance yesterday.
Well, boo fucking who for you. And it was a little bit higher than 80 outside yesterday. We had a heat advisory here in the Tennessee Valley yesterday, and I believe other days this week. I know I was out with my IATSE 900 sisters and brothers on Wednesday and Friday. We were working at the amphitheater. That's outside, right? And so it was really hot. Yeah. Very hot. And, it was hard to stay hydrated, hard to just stay okay. And, we had to look out for one another. But the heat is a real big deal, and that's something that is, becoming a bigger deal every year, it seems like. And so you mentioned to me off air, heat penalties in the contract. Yeah. That's something else that I think, labor has to really be talking about is how do we protect our members from this massive heat, and what can we do to, disincentivize employers from putting us at risk when it comes to the heat. So, I think that's an important discussion as well. So, yeah, I've loved the calls. Thanks, Will, Jose, Brandon, everybody who called in. Really appreciate y'all doing that. It was great to hear some rank and file perspectives about what's going on, because I mean, you can pick up a piece here and there from the media or from leadership, but we tuned into the press conference, and of course there was a lot that President O'Brien didn't get into, obviously.
Right.
So it's been great to hear some of these details, and I'm sure folks listening have also probably appreciated getting some inside accounts of this Teamsters UPS struggle.
So we've run through the queue of calls, but the phone line is still open, 844-899-8857, if anybody does want to call in, particularly, of course, during this time. Love to hear from Teamsters. But we do have we had several actually stories that we wanted to get to that we haven't gotten to yet. So let's start getting to some of them. We're obviously not going to get to all of them, but this one's going to be a quick one. The U.S. Department of Labor yesterday on 30 June announced a proposal by its Mine Safety and Health Administration to amend current federal standards to protect the nation's miners from health hazards related to exposure to respirable crystalline silica, or silica dust. The proposed rule change will ensure miners have at least the same level of protections as workers in other industries. This is important because as others, but most recently and relevantly to us, a friend of the show, Kim Kelly, did a very deep investigation for In These Times. I could not recommend more reading her piece in These Times. I very rarely cry when I read, and I did when I read this piece. Some mitigating circumstances could be that I was running on 2 hours of sleep and on a 5 a.m. flight. But still, I cried. It was really disgusting what the coal industry is putting miners through. And the long and short of it is that black lung is on the rise after really declining through the second half of the 20th century to very significantly, and since 2000 or so, it has continued to rise until now. More than 1 in 8 miners who have been working in the industry for more than 20 years have black lung. 1 in 8. We're back up to where we were in the middle of the 20th century, if I'm remembering right. Really a lot of backtracking. Some of the differences with the silica dust is, like, silica dust didn't used to be an issue, apparently. It was primarily coal dust that was creating black lung. And so all of the rules and regulations were kind of really surrounding coal dust. And as the coal veins have been extracted, they have to mine deeper and wider to get what is left of the coal in these veins. And so they are grinding up against more non-coal stuff, more stuff that will create the silica dust, and it's getting in their lungs. And because the regulations aren't there for it, they're actually in other industries, in construction industries, because silica is a known hazard. It's known that this is bad for you. In construction industries, you can have, if I'm remembering right, 10% of the amount of silica dust in the air as coal miners can have. So coal miners are inhaling 10 times the allowable limit of silica dust that a construction worker has. So it's very bad. It's killing people, literally killing people. 30 and 40 year olds with black lung, which is not curable. It's not reversible. Very bad stuff. And so there's a rule to change the rules surrounding silica exposure from MSHA, the Mine Safety and Health Administration. Additionally, Kim reported last week that prior to this change coming out, which came out on June the 30th, on June 22nd, a group of U.S. senators representing major coal mining states sent a letter to the Biden administration's Office of Management and Budget Director Shalonda Young demanding answers about a proposed rule from MSHA to update the respirable crystalline silica standard. These senators being Joe Manchin, Sherrod Brown, Bob Casey, John Fetterman, Mark Warner, and Tim Kaine. And notice, not a single Republican here. I mean, obviously, like, look, we just did a first half of the show. Our first half of the show was talking about the failures of the Biden administration regarding the CHIPS Act. Okay, so I don't think anybody's going to accuse us of being apologists for Democrats, or you wouldn't do so if you were in good faith. But this is real, right? There are no Republicans that are fighting to make sure that coal miners don't get black lung again. It's disgusting. And of course, none of Alabama's senators are there, despite the fact that Alabama senators also represent thousands of coal miners. But they don't care. They just as soon as you have black lung. But one of the things that Kim's reporting from last month showed was that in coal mining states that had higher union density, which, funnily enough, the coal mining industry in Alabama is heavily unionized. If I remember right, it's like something like 80-90% of the mines in Alabama are union. They are not having these issues with silica dust because their union safety committees are ensuring that this is not happening. It's primarily the issue is arising in the Appalachian coal fields where the UMWA, where the miners' unions have been kind of decimated by, in some cases, like literal warfare. So back to this piece from last week. Those senators added to a chorus of organizations who have been calling on the federal government to enact such a rule for decades, a coalition of 28 groups, including, of course, the United Mine Workers of America, Appalachian Citizens Law Center, the National Black Lung Association, and Appalachian Voices sent a June 29 letter interrogating the rulemaking delay. And so, like I said, it came out yesterday, this proposed rule. So it's not gone into effect yet. It's a proposed rule. And MSHA explains that unhealthy levels of silica, a carcinogen, and exposures over time cause severe illnesses, including silicosis, progressive massive fibrosis, non-malignant respiratory disease, such as emphysema, kidney disease, and lung cancer. Exposure to mixed coal mine dust that contains respirable crystalline silica can lead to the development of coal workers' commonly known as black lung disease, multi-dust, black lung disease, and progressive massive fibrosis. So this is real, and it's getting worse. In Kim's piece, she mentions that the current standard allows miners to be exposed to as much as 100 micrograms of silica dust per cubic meter, which is twice as high, not 10 times as high, as I said earlier, apologies, twice as high as the silica limit for workers in all other industries. The new rule would cut that down by half to 50 micrograms and finally catch up to the recommendation from NIOSH that they made in 1974. MSHA sent the proposed rule off to OMB in January 2023, where it's languished ever since. It's now been 6 months, roughly twice as long as a normal review period, and the senators are demanding answers. So they got the answer yesterday that it's been proposed now, and so comments are open, and here's hoping that this rule goes through. In addition to reducing the exposure limit, the proposal also includes other requirements to protect miners' health, such as exposure sampling and medical surveillance at no cost for metal and non-metal miners. It would also replace outdated requirements for respiratory protection with a standard that reflects the latest advances in respiratory protection technologies and practices. So, good news there, and looking forward to it going into effect for sure.
Absolutely.
Appreciate the $4.99 super chat from Nathan, local 886 Teamster, ready to strike, 84 hours UPS, TikTok, indeed. Appreciate the super chat, Nathan. We have still 90 people watching us, 54 likes. Let's get those numbers up and go on to another topic. We talked last week about the Death Star bill. That's what the Texas AFL-CIO is calling the preemption bill in Texas that is overruling municipalities' ability to set labor protections. And we talked in particular about the fact that this is going to override mandated water breaks in some municipalities, which are, amazingly, amazingly in the vein that why would anybody have an issue with this? But there were ordinances in a couple of municipalities in Texas that said that workers must be given the opportunity to have a 10-minute water break every 4 hours. And so in reaction to this absolutely crazy, woke, liberal, communist agenda to make sure that workers in the Texas heat have water, really insane stuff that these people are doing, the Texas legislature signed a bill that's going to preempt municipalities' ability to do this kind of stuff and overrules it. So meaning that these protections are no longer going to be operable in these municipalities, and workers will no longer have that protection to get water breaks. I mean, it's insane. But it does go beyond that. And so David Griscom, who lives in Texas, he writes for Jacobin magazine occasionally. He was on the Majority Report yesterday talking about just how expansive this bill is. And so I took a couple of clips from that, from his appearance yesterday. And so let's play this first one, Adam.
This bill, so on September 1st, those local provisions in cities like Austin and Dallas will go away. But it's so much broader than just the water break issue that I think it's really important breaking down what exactly this bill does, because the water break thing, is taking the headlines because it's so egregious, it's so clearly cruel and anti-worker. But this is everything, frankly, that this bill covers. So this was put forward by Dustin Burrows in the House, Republican from Lubbock, and it's called a preemption bill. And what that means is it basically preempts localities and local and city governments from being able to pass any kind of rule or legislation on things that state code covers. So we're talking about things like water breaks. We're also talking about things like fracking bans. We're talking about environmental procedures. We're talking about ability to rule over healthcare, housing. Basically, it strips local government in the state of Texas from being able to govern. And it's been presented as that. Dustin Burrows was being interviewed by this right-wing organization, and he said it's really a stay in your lane bill. And a lot of these local politicians will be happy because it means that the only thing that they're really going to have to be worried about doing is filling potholes and not having to answer big questions about governance. And
right, absolutely, I totally agree. It's taking local government to a point where it's like, what is the mayor and city council's job at that point?
Right.
And of course, it's a way to squash local power.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to build power at the local level. It's easier sometimes to get reforms passed at the local level.
Right.
Especially in a state like Texas or a state like Alabama, where the state legislature is so tilted to the far right, and thanks to gerrymandering and various other reasons, they have a super majority. I'm not sure if they have a super majority in Texas, in the Texas legislature, but obviously in Alabama they do. The Republicans have a super majority here in our legislature, and so for all those reasons, people try to make their lives better at the local level. They try to work within their local communities, and obviously that's a problem for Republicans in the state government there in Texas and in Alabama.
Yeah, and he expanded on some of the motivations for this kind of stuff. Let's play this second clip from him.
But if you look at the actual opinion on a lot of these hot button issues of Texans, the way that the Republican Party is governing is not in line with these things at all. So the only opportunity that Texans have to maybe push for a more politics that's more reflective of their values and ideas has been on the local level. And that's why the Republican Party, they've been spooked by the potential of good examples, right? If working in Austin is better than working in the county outside of the city, that might be harmful for Republicans politically down the line. So this is an attempt not only to deny democracy, but also a response to a threat that they've been feeling, that if you can have more progressive politicians and policies in the major cities in the state, that might be threatening to their political power and legitimacy.
I mean, and I feel like they might have lifted this a little bit from what is happening in Mississippi. I don't know if you followed that, but where the state legislature essentially has disempowered Jackson from doing a lot of things on a local city level, and is overriding the ability of cities and parts of their state that are more diverse, more non-white people, maybe more of like organizing action happening in those areas and attempting to cut their legs off from under them. It is the definition of big government that they're supposedly hateful towards, but it's and it also, to return to your point about disempowerment, how disempowering is this, where you feel like you can't get involved on a local level in your city and try to advocate for positions that are going to help you, and that you're electing politicians that are supposedly representing you, but they don't have the ability to do so because of what Abbott and the Republicans on the state level are trying to do.
I think those are really good points about that. You know, being scared by the potential of good examples is definitely that's a prime reason for overriding local control. And but of course, this bill does not take away the municipality's ability to give tax breaks to companies to try to attract them to their municipality. It only inhibits their ability to protect the workers that are going to be actually doing the labor for the companies that they're going to try to bring there. And Emma's definitely right that this is not just isolated to Texas. She mentioned Mississippi, and we can hop over to the next state, to Alabama, to talk about the exact same kind of thing. Birmingham passed a minimum wage increase to $10.10 an hour. I think, probably, when was that, Adam? Almost a decade ago?
Now that you say it, it was back in 2015, maybe.
Jeez.
2016, somewhere in that range, when we were doing that organizing.
Yeah, so it's but Birmingham passed it before the organizing really took off here in Huntsville.
Right, yeah. Birmingham led the way, and there was a raise the wage movement there in Birmingham. They were able to push and get the city council and the mayor at the time to agree to raise the wage in Birmingham. And raise the wage campaigns took off across the state, and I was involved a little bit with the one here in Huntsville. And I felt like as soon as we were getting some momentum, as they pointed out earlier in the clip, they cut the legs out from underneath us. And banned cities from even having the ability to do such a thing. And similar with the Confederate monuments. It was actually a pretty similar track. It was like, okay, so a year or two later, a lot of the same people were all working on getting rid of the Confederate monument in Huntsville. And what did they do? They passed a damn law in the state legislature saying you can't do that either. And so, it's all about using state power in such a way to disempower everyday people. And, that seems to be what's happening in Texas. It's certainly what has happened here in Alabama and in Mississippi as well. I'm glad she brought that up.
Absolutely.
And in terms of, the economic development and the tax breaks and subsidies, I wonder if this would prevent cities in Texas from doing something like a community benefits agreement. Right? Which is a different tack to take when you're doing economic development, but you could have a community benefits agreement where there are things in black and white spelled out with the company that says basically here are the strings attached to this project. It may be, a certain amount of minority representation in the workforce. It may be setting up a pre-apprenticeship training program to, recruit folks and get folks in a pipeline to be employed there. It could be environmental protections. It could be union neutrality. These are all things that could be in a community benefits agreement, and these are all options that local government could pursue if they wanted to in economic development, to say, hey, if we're going to give you a tax break or a subsidy or write you a check, as they sometimes do, here's some ways we're going to protect the community to ensure we're not just doing another corporate handout. And I worry if this bill in Texas would actually take that option off the table for local government.
Yeah, I don't know. It could. It very well could. And so, David opens his segment with saying that he likes to try to write about these issues in a way that explains how people can win, and so he wrapped up with a very similar message, I think, to what we promote on our show, which is why we're such big fans of David. David's great, that it's not hopeless just because you can't pass ordinances in your city. That doesn't mean that you can't get water breaks. And so let's listen to how David wraps up.
Okay, if the politics is blocked right now, it means that the fight has to go into labor. And just because these things are blocked on the state level doesn't mean on the political level doesn't mean you can't win these things in contracts. So for Texans listening to this means it is critical that you support the institutions like the Teamsters who are fighting for things like air conditioning and better protections for themselves. Support the nurses who are on strike here at Ascension, and recognize that even though the Republicans might be able to control the legislature and the state government, the vast wealth that is created in the state is created by the work of millions of Texans, and recognizing that you have a lot more leverage than you are told. And utilizing that to fight for yourself and your neighbors and your coworkers is the only way we're going to be able to get out of this kind of crisis. So no time for despair. It's time to get to work.
Yeah,
absolutely agree.
Yeah, and I can't think of anything else to say on that. So that's as good a way to end that segment as any. I've got one more quick story, and then Adam is going to I think wrap up the show with his song and film of the month that he does every month. And this will just be a quick one. Y'all will remember that we interviewed the Challenger slate for the Machinists Union District 19. The Machinists Union, their districts are not geographical, they are industrial. And so, for example, District 141 represents airline workers, District 19 represents railroad workers. And everybody, I'm sure, remembers all the issues with the potential rail strike in December, and remembers the rank and file displeasure with the Biden administration in particular, and also in some areas, in some unions, with their union's leadership. And so a group of challengers in the Machinist District Lodge 19 decided to create a slate and run for the leadership in their district, and that election happened.
And before you tell us the results of that election, I just want to put out there for transparency that we interviewed the challenger slate, the establishment slate, for lack of a better term, the incumbent slate, I guess for a more neutral term. They did reach out to us after that and wanted to come on the show, and of course we said sure, we'll provide equal time. It just didn't work out. They didn't make it happen. And so I just want to be transparent that
we did. Yeah,
we weren't trying to provide unequal time, or put our finger on the scale in this election or anything like that. These brothers from the Challenger slate wanted to come on the show and talk to us, and so of course we let them do that. And the incumbent, his team reached out to us. The incumbent didn't directly reach out to us, but his people did, and it was just scheduling. Snappy.
I think we actually had him. We had him scheduled, I think, 2 weeks in a row, and then the day before each time he said, "Oh, not," or his team
something
said
came
no,
up.
Something came up.
So I just want to put that out there for transparency, and for any machinists who may be listening who are wondering if we were trying to take a position in the election or something like that. Just thought that was important.
So the vote happened on Friday, June 9th, and the incumbent slate swept the elections. They won every office that was contested, but Reese Murtaugh, who was running for the top position for the challenger slate, he said, and this is from him, quote, "Many ballots were voided during the tabulation process, and here is the end result. Numerous bylaws have been violated, and we are protesting the results with the DOL. Thanks for all the support. The fight continues." And so that's his allegations, that there were bylaws that had been violated during the count, during the voiding of some of the ballots, and he fell 6 votes short of the incumbent. The incumbent received 796 votes, and Murtaugh received 790.
Wow.
So
so close.
Ridiculously close. And 2 days ago, the challenger slate said on Twitter, "We just received confirmation that the Department of Labor is conducting a full recount at Richard Nadeau's," I'm assuming that's a lawyer, "Richard Nadeau's office in Denver. They began this week on Tuesday morning." So we will presumably soon be learning about the results of the full recount, and also presumably the DOL is not going to conduct a full recount unless there's some issues there that had been sustained. But so I wanted to make sure that folks knew that, since we did interview the slate, and I'm sure that there were some folks that were interested in knowing the results of that election.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Adam, every month you kind of picks a film and a song that you feel like is good and that you want to highlight for the month. So, what do you have this month?
Sure. So we actually ran out the clock in June and did not get this segment into a June episode. And so this is really the June-July film and song of the month, more so on the June side of things. Folks know that June was Pride Month. And so for Pride Month, we did talk to Pride at Work. We had some good conversations, I thought. And of course, our position is that the answer to bigotry is solidarity. And there's nothing, I can't think of any movie out there that really exemplifies this as well as the movie Pride. It's a 2014 British historical comedy drama, and it is a wonderful film. I quite enjoy it just as a movie, but also, of course, as a unionist, it really, really speaks to me. And it's based on a true story. It depicts a group of lesbian and gay activists who raise money to help families affected by the British miners' strike in 1984. And it ultimately would become the Lesbians and Gays Support the Miners campaign. So it's just a really fascinating story of these young queer folks from London who, go out to the country and support these, rank and file miners who are locked in this epic struggle with Margaret Thatcher's conservative government. And, there's a lot of cultural tensions, so to speak, of course. You've got folks in the mining community who don't really want to associate with them. You've got folks in the gay community who are like, what are you doing supporting these miners? Like, why them?
Right.
And so, the gay activists were kind of getting pushback from both sides. And, then you also had some brave miners, though, who were all about it and who welcomed their new allies and understood that, maybe they didn't understand everything about these people, but they recognized that they were fellow people who had their back for good reason. And so the movie kind of tells that story of this coalition that grows and, the struggles that they have, and also just some of the ultimately the solidarity that comes out as these folks from very different communities learn to, really love each other and have each other's back. And it's a great demonstration of solidarity. I can't help but, associate it with the Strike Fest that we did with, the Valley Labor Report. It's been a couple years now. It's been over 2 years, actually. But when the UMWA went out on strike in April 2021, of course, we were doing everything we could to cover the strike and support the striking miners. And We ended up doing Strike Fest. Longtime listeners may recall that. It was a live event on the ground in Brookwood at the UMWA Hall. We had a concert. We had multiple comedians. We had Lee Baines and the Glory Fires.
Mike Cooley from the Drive-By Truckers.
Mike Cooley from the Drive-By Truckers. Drew Morgan, DJ Lewis. It was a great live show. And as part of this, we also did over 48-hour live stream, like a marathon, begathon kind of thing online. And so we ended up raising about $70,000+ for the strike fund, which was huge, at least for us. It was a drop in the bucket compared to the needs of the folks on the ground, but we were quite proud that we were able to do that, and it was because so many diverse folks from all over the country, all over the world, really, came together and supported these miners. And, I think back to that day we were down there, or, the days that we were down there. And I remember specifically for the afternoon of the concerts and the comedians, what an eclectic crowd it was. Because you had people who were very obviously leftist. You had older folks there dressed in their Sunday best. You had a bunch of gruff miners, in their UMWA camo. You had real country folks. You had folks who had clearly driven in from the cities. You had young, alternative kind of folks, young queer folks, right here in this rural community, and everybody was there in the spirit of solidarity. And, I think this movie really resonates with me because of that. So I checked recently. I cannot find it streaming, easily available right now. The only place I found it was on Showtime. But it's one of those that I think if you are a union member, if you're a union ally, if you're intrigued by the idea of coalitions coming together to support working class interests, I think you'll enjoy this movie. There's some good acting, good British actors in the film, and I think you'll really enjoy it. And as for my song of the month, I took it from this movie, Pride. It's a song by Billy Bragg, and of course, Billy Bragg, you could do a labor song of the month every year with Billy Bragg songs. He's kind of a legend in this space of labor music. But he has a song called There's Power in a Union, and that's how the movie Pride closes, with this song. And it's from his 1986 album, Talking with the Tax Man About Poetry. It does have the same title as an otherwise unrelated 1913 song by Joe Hill. Of course, also a legend in his own right when it comes to labor music. But yeah, really, really dig the song, There's Power in a Union. It's got a good rock vibe to it, but more importantly, just a great message about working people coming together and joining together alongside our common interests and making our lives better in that process. So if you haven't already, please check out Pride, the movie Pride from 2014. Great way to kind of cap off Pride Month is to check that film out. And while you're listening to the closing credits, you'll check out the song There's Power in a Union by Billy Bragg. Look that up on your YouTube, Spotify, however you listen to music. Check it out. Add it to your playlist of good labor songs. It's a good one to listen to get fired up.
All right. And with that, you want to go ahead and wrap it up?
Yeah, I think so. It's been a good show. I've appreciated everybody's participation.
Yeah, and appreciate Big LeMayo, $25 super chat. Really, thank you for that.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah.
And we still have about 90 people that are listening. So presumably you found us through our reaction to the Teamsters press conference, and you have enjoyed the show enough to stick around, so we really appreciate it. If you haven't yet, and you've enjoyed the show after we got off of the Teamster UPS stuff, this is the kind of stuff that we do every week, so subscribe and tune into us next week, where we're going to be doing the same thing about some different stuff, some of the same stuff. We are live every Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m. Our Thursday morning show is a little bit hit or miss as far as the time, but we are 9:30 a.m. sharp every single Saturday morning, so you can always count on that.
That's right. That's right. And, you know, the first half of the show from 9:30 to 11 tends to have more of a local focus because it is on, you know, local FM radio. So we tend to do more Tennessee Valley stories and Alabama stories in the main show. Our online-only overtime section is a little bit looser. Of course, we can talk a little bit more freely, not being on the radio. And so sometimes we go in different directions with overtime, talking more about national stories or
sometimes we'll get a little bit political.
More
overtime.
Sometimes more politics. Sometimes just going deeper on particular issues. And so we do tend to have guests almost every week. So if you have ideas on guests or folks you think we should talk to who have something relevant to say about the labor movement or, you know, working people organizing more broadly, let us know. We've got a great selection of guests that we're going to be reaching out to, you know, have on in the coming weeks. Some really interesting people, and I think y'all will enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. DL Sendero in the chat says 9:30 a.m. Central. I don't know if I said Central, but it is Central Time. 9:30 a.m. Central Time every Saturday. So, like I said, those of you still hanging around, if you have not subscribed, please do so. Like the stream on your way out.
And then check out the back catalog. You know, slowly we're working on some of the playlists on YouTube. So that some of the older videos, like, you can easily access those and see, you know, by theme, you know, different content. But definitely check that out, and really appreciate everybody tuning in and sharing some time with us this morning.
Yep. All right, and with that, we're going to go ahead and roll out. Thank you. See you next week.
Bye, y'all. Solidarity forever.